Hello everybody and welcome to the Blatantly Biased Racing Podcast, which unfortunately this week is going to be removed from the internet because we are underweight and under length and are therefore disqualified from being a podcast, I believe. I think someone from Mercedes did the technical for this.
I wish I was underweight, honestly.
We're going to get disqualified for being overweight. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's been the story of my life.
I think the main thing we're going to do is let's not allow Mercedes to edit our podcast in future because it'll.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they have a habit, twice in 1 year now.
Yeah.
Two disqualification,
Maybe Seb was using their engines when he got disqualified, so are we counting that?
Oh God, yeah. I mean, that one still hurts as well.
Yes, that was and that was a podium. That was tough.
P2,
yeah.
P2, man. Yeah. Anyways, so how was the race?
Can I put it this way? The race was odd for me because it was really enjoyable as an F1 fan, but it was also kind of dull in a way as well. Like it was kind of a race of two halves. It was one of those races where it was about strategy, but the actual on-track action, especially among the top eight, wasn't amazing. There was the DRS trains were just all over the place. So I think if it wasn't for strategy and a few fuck-ups from certain drivers, it would have probably not been the most amazing race, but the drama around it, I think, brought it back to life.
I think there's a lot of... Again, this is maybe you're also feeling something similar, because I'm starting to feel a deja vu of sorts, because in 2021 we had something similar, because we'll have dull races in between and out of the blue something would happen. I mean, Baku 2021 is the perfect example, because it was pretty dull. Once Max and Checo got the lead, they were pretty much cruising, and then out of the blue, Max has a puncture, and then Lewis had the magic button thing, and these were the kind of things that happened a lot in 2021. That out of the blue, something would happen. I mean, Abu Dhabi 2021.
Don't mention the war.
Yeah.
I
mean,
God.
Half of the Lewis Hamilton fans have already left the podcast. But again, that was a race where out of the blue something happened. And even this time around, there was... And again, I think this is
We should just be fair as well, because to be honest, if this was Spa last year, it would have been one of the best races of the season, I think. It's just, I think it's kind of like 2021 where the last few races have been so good that this was kind of like, okay, it wasn't one of the best ones of the last 7 or 8 races. That's probably how it would be.
Did you have a feeling of being exhausted after the race?
Yes, because there wasn't much happening. This was the thing, because I saw them in DRS trains down the Kemmel Straight, because they shortened the DRS, which we'll talk about in a minute, I'm guessing. But because of that, it was mostly strategy. So because of the strategy thing, I had the strategy window open. I was following a couple of drivers. It wasn't like kind of in Hungary where there was really only one storyline going that I was just focused on. There was a lot of, where's he? What's going on with this? Why is Perez washed again? All of these different things. Yeah. I did a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, and because there were too many things happening, and the problem is there's not one or two drivers. There was 7 to 8 drivers, and again, there's a good thing about it. There's a bad thing about it, because it makes it hard to follow. And but honestly, overall, I think this is something actually I wanted to get off my chest for every Formula 1 fan. I mean, look, guys, you can be a Hamilton fan, you can be a George fan, you can be a Lando fan. There aren't many, apparently. You can, or a hater. I mean, that's more prevalent these days. A Max fan, any of the 7 drivers that have won a race this season.
Mm-hmm.
I think what you need to realize.
Perez. Sorry, anyway.
Yeah. I mean, there's one thing that you actually have to realize right now. Almost every race, the next 10 races that you're going to enter, either of your favorite driver has a possibility that they could win, unless they are Leclerc or Sainz, because Ferrari fucks up everything.
Unless they're in a Ferrari, basically. Yeah,
but that's expected. That's par, of course. You get a podium, be happy with it.
Well, in fairness, there's a couple of races where you can expect Ferrari, I think.
Yeah, they would. But the point is, stop the fucking toxicity.
Yeah.
This is a moment in Formula One that does not come often. The last 2 seasons, you've sat down, cribbed, unless you're a Max Verstappen fan, because then you've had a field day. Everyone else, you just sat down, cribbed, mourned, or cried over the fact that you cannot fight for a win. Now, almost every fucking race, you can do that. Enjoy it, celebrate it, and just for once, stop crying over results.
I just think that there's certain fans that will just never be happy because, I mean, like I posted this yesterday, I just said, look, if you're not enjoying Formula One right now, I would say give up because you're never going to enjoy it. Like basically, give up and just keep an ear out. And if you're a driver, if you're only following for your favorite driver and you're not enjoying it right now, then just give up. Man. Well, just give up and wait until they start dominating again or for the first time, you know. This is an epic. Man. We haven't seen Formula One like this literally since 2012. Like, I mean, 2021 was epic, obviously, for different reasons. But we haven't had a situation where multiple drivers every single race can win the race since 2012. Like, it's been over a decade. It's always been...
And just understand this thing, man. And again, it's enough with the cribbing, man. Come on. Again, almost every fan. Right now, whatever I've seen is every fan finds a reason. If this happened, my driver would win. If my driver is the best... Stop crying, for fuck's sake. Stop that.
As Max once said, if my mum had balls, she'd be my dad, you know?
Yeah.
Look, I think...
would be a happier place that way.
I personally disagree. I want everyone to keep fighting. I want angry fans because it gives us something to talk about. And also, it means that I get wildly fun entertainment on Twitter because I'm not a fan... Like... I have, like, I would say probably 10 favorite drivers and 10 drivers I'm not a huge fan of. And out of the 10 I'm not a huge fan of, there's probably 2 I wish would just fuck off out of the grid. Lance Stroll, you know, you're one of them. But my point is, like, for
He's
me
the
on
only
Twitter...
one for me, honestly, right now.
Yeah, the rest of them not really, like, But my point is like, I can go on Twitter and kind of just wind people up because I just don't care. So if someone comes on and says, oh, you're Lando fanboy, it's like, I'm not a Lando fanboy. Or like Max fan, it's like, okay, well, you say whatever you want. Like, I don't care. Yeah. So for me, it's entertaining. So I think if you're currently a Hamilton or Max fan that can't stand any bad word being said against Hamilton or Verstappen, please quote tweet me with your angriest stuff so that I can read it out on the podcast.
And subscribe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're offended, subscribe. If you're not offended, subscribe.
And drop a comment how offended you are. Remember the last video had one. I have only come here to drop a comment. I don't know what he wrote, but I like, what a G.
Yeah.
I could not help myself.
He said he was reporting the podcast as well, and I said legend. I think I'm 99% sure he was joking. But I mean, who knows?
The second reply was, but I'll let him. Screw it.
Brilliant. We want more of that.
Like we care.
Yeah.
Anyways,
so where do we start with this race?
I think let's start with George.
Yeah,
let's start with George. First of all, the very fact why he went for a strategy which was, it seemed outlandish at first, but I think there's certain level of logic there. I think first he'll pop a very important question because that is a question which apparently every driver fan wants to know. Which car was the fastest in Spa?
It wasn't the Mercedes. Anyway, that's for damn sure. It was either the McLaren or the Red Bull. I would say probably the Red Bull, if you just look at like the qualifying pace and the pace on Sunday. Yeah, okay, I'm going to say, listen, Red Bull I'm sorry, Checo needs to be removed. We'll talk about it, I'm sure. But look, the point is, Red Bull is Max is Red Bull. So if I say Red Bull, I just mean Max for the minute. Look, it was the fastest, 6/10 in qualifying, and the only downside of that, I think, is they did have the bigger rear wing in qualifying, which meant they dragged that over to the race, I believe. So I think there was more, perhaps, potential pace in that Red Bull. But yeah, it wasn't the Mercedes, it was the McLaren or Red Bull. The problem we had at this race, though, was track position was essentially king, because as you heard from
Oscar.
Yeah, Piastri. Yeah, so he said, like, clear air was king. It was the same with George. As soon as he got in that clear air, he was just fine. But the DRS trains were really, really bad at this race. So all things considered, I think whoever was at the front out of Red Bull, Mercedes or McLaren was kind of keeping it there. And I think you have to give Mercedes a lot of credit here, because once again, they don't have the fastest car, but operationally they are perfect. Almost. Well, you know what I mean. But they are just that team. Red Bull is generally like this as well. Red Bull make very, very, very few mistakes. This weekend, you can't quote as a mistake. It was just an engine penalty. I'm assuming you would agree that if Verstappen started on pole, he was winning that race with ease.
By 10 seconds.
Yeah. We knew that car would be amazing around Spa. Absolutely.
Precisely.
So yeah, what do you think? I think it was probably Red Bull, McLaren, then Mercedes, but Mercedes was operationally perfect.
I think the key takeaway that I got was that the top 3 teams, at least, I think Ferrari's maybe a step back. How easily Lewis passed Charles earlier in the race, it showed that.
Mm-hmm. Especially given how difficult it was to overtake.
Yeah, exactly. And also the fact that Lewis had higher downforce compared to Charles was a bit quicker in the straight line. So I think Ferrari was a bit slower compared to the top 3. But the gap between the top 3, I don't think it's something... It's maybe a 10th or 2.
Mm-hmm.
And if you start bickering over a 10th or 2, it becomes very tough. I think if Max was at the front, he's going to win.
Mm-hmm.
Between Mercedes, McLaren and Red Bull, when Red Bull is in traffic, I don't think the gap was huge. I think if Max was in top 5, he started in top 5, he would have won probably. Maybe not, because he had 2 mediums compared to a hard. That is also something that got factored later. So maybe that would have maybe hampered him a bit. But still, I think if I have to make a projection, I think Max was the fastest driver. There's no doubt about it. I mean, what he did on Saturday, there's no doubt about it. He's a specialist at Spa. After Kimi, I think he's the first driver who actually I can say when it comes to Spa, he's going to do something magical.
Yeah.
Leaving him aside, I think Mercedes and McLaren, there's not too much of a difference. In the last stint, Oscar was able to catch Lewis. I'm not entirely sure what happened, because in the first and second stint, Oscar was still a steady distance behind Leclerc and Checo. But in the final stint, he just kicked on. So something probably worked for him.
This is something we've seen in the McLaren a good bit, though, right? Once it's kind of low on fuel in the last stints of the race, it tends to be much, much, much quicker. So I don't know if maybe a lighter car wins, and if it doesn't get disqualified.
Yeah. We'll get to that as well.
Yeah.
So maybe that played a role. But I think we are fighting over the wrong thing here. If there's a 10th or 2 difference, and if you have a shortened straight, it's going to play a major role. And that is what we saw this time around.
Mm-hmm.
Why Max was not able to win, one of the biggest reasons was that the straight was a bit shortened. If
the
it
DRS,
was, the DRS straight was a bit shortened. If it was its normal length, we would not be seeing these kind of issues. And also, by the way, Max was
why
not having...
did they? Do you know why they shortened it? Because it doesn't make I feel like with DRS, it is a situation where you either lengthen it out and just accept that all of the overtakes are going to happen in DRS, or you get rid of it completely. Because when they shorten it like this, it just consistently gives us these silly DRS trains for the entire race.
The teams which have higher downforce cars, or a lower powered engine, basically. So that's basically what we saw this time around. It was not a case of, and even when George overtook Sergio Perez, he spent almost, I think, like 10 laps behind him, did nothing, couldn't do anything. And that is something that showed that maybe we should keep it the natural length. I mean, honestly, I find it very hard to understand when people try to lionize the fact that it is tough to overtake.
Yeah.
You're hampering the driver behind, and I really don't see the point when you do something like this. Maybe, by the way, if it was not shortened, Lewis would have anyway eventually overtook George. That could have happened. Because the longer straight kind of nullifies whatever higher downforce, low downforce gap there is. But again, anyways, that is a conversation for a different day. What I felt was it hampered the racing. And maybe this is something that FIA needs to take a look at, because they did this nonsense in Imola as well. and it fucked up the racing bit. Maybe it's a good thing or not. It's the direction they want to take. I really don't have too much of horse in the race in this case.
I just think they're just kind of prepping things, but it doesn't really make sense because, like, obviously we got no DRS in 2026, but it's like DRS just either is overpowered or should be switched off, because as soon as you get it within that window, it's just problematic. Like the only time DRS is very, very good is in places like Brazil, where you've got that kind of double activation point, so one car can overtake and then the car behind that you've just overtaken has a chance to come back.
The Senaises,
whereas like Mexico and here in Spa, it's kind of like you pass and then you're gone, and it's kind of, so I feel like they were probably trying to stop that happening, where you're just getting,
could be
but it backfired. I think
honestly I've not again, maybe there is an element of, I mean, a lot of people have complained that overtaking in Spa was too easy. This time around, it was too tough. I think there has to be a balance in the fact that, first of all, you have to realize something that I think FIA is completely forgetting. Following has become tougher this season, and they've not really they've not been attentive enough to this, and it hurt them in Imola. You got a procession. They lucked out this time around. It would have been a very straightforward win for Lewis if ultimately the gamble had not been there. Okay, so now let's talk about the race winner, honestly. First of all, what did you make of George Russell's strategy? I mean, the acumen to actually pull that off. What's your view on the whole thing?
I think it was a really good driver-based call, because realistically Mercedes saw it as if he did a two-stop, he was in P5. If he did a one-stop, he was in P5. But George basically, I think he said after the race that as soon as he got into clear air, it felt like he was in a simulator and he could just keep going forever. So I think it was just an amazing call from him. And he wasn't the only one to do that one stop either. I think everyone thinks it was only George. But yeah, just a really good call.
Best friend, right?
Yeah, it was Alonso, Stroll, Tsunoda, K-Mag, they all did them, right?
Yeah.
I think so,
I'm talking about the point scorers only. So,
right, okay, yeah. So Alonso, yeah.
So both are quite close actually.
Yeah. They really like each other. But yeah, I think it was a really good call from him, and I don't know if even George expected to be in front, but literally I think it just showed once again that clean air, like Piastri was right, clean air was king, because Lewis should have been able to pass him pretty quickly, but as soon as he got close and within that dirty air, that was that. It was just, he couldn't get by. And Piastri was catching both of them like wildfire. And as soon as he got close as well, you could see his pace kind of slowed down. So I just think it was, it was just clean air was king. George obviously realized that, and it worked, sort of.
Yeah. I think one thing that stood out for me this race, ideally, it cemented, I think I wrote about it as well, posted on X, that this race kind of cemented George Russell as one of the elite drivers in F1. Because it's not only about making this was precisely what Jenson Button used to do at McLaren. He'll basically call in that now it's time to pit for slicks, do that, gain the lead, win the race. In a lot of times he's done that. And again, at the moment when Lewis pitted, Mercedes was still not sure that George was going to extend the stint and just go with the one stopper. The initial team radio was, think about the one stopper. That's what George said. Then after, I think when Lewis pitted, there were 5 to 6 laps had actually expired, and then the team came on the radio once again, and they asked him, are you sure you want to go ahead with this? And he was very calm. He said, yep, I'm going ahead. And he did that. And again, there's a lot of devil in detail. And everyone forgot. The thing is, when you get to Twitter, the kind of brain cells that are actually there is very minuscule. So they don't really go into the details and actually try to understand what the fuck happened throughout the weekend. Yeah. And the first thing that stood out in qualifying was, and if you go in, just take a look at the telemetry, it becomes very clear. Lewis opted for a higher downforce setup. George, on the other hand, opted for a lower downforce setup because, again, maybe for races, he expected that to be a better ploy. Now, what worked for Lewis was the fact that using that higher downforce setup, he was able to qualify ahead.
Yep.
And there was around 5 to 6 kilometers per hour gap in top speed between Lewis and George. So when Lewis was starting to catch George, there's something very, very clear. Now, since I was a moron and following the entire time, live timings, I hate one thing about the live timings. Just one crib. That thing is almost a minute ahead of the live race action. And it kind of kills the you can say the suspense part of it.
You know what's gonna happen. Yeah,
precisely. And it kind of kills the suspense. So, but yeah, again, it is what it is. What truly happened was, in the first sector, Lewis was not gaining anything. In the third sector, Lewis was not gaining anything.
So it's all the downforce in the second sector.
7 to 8 tenths in the second sector. Yeah. It was pretty consistent. You could see it in the live timings. Every lap, first sector nothing, last sector nothing, bang, in the second sector, he would gain 8 tenths. And Lewis caught up to George at 7 to 8 tenths per lap. That was a standard that it was followed. George's times did not deviate a bit, and neither did Lewis. So when Lewis actually caught up with him, the area where Lewis was making up time, he could not make any more time because he was in the dirty air.
There's also there's no place to really overtake in that second sector.
I mean,
either.
There used to be.
You
it's
need to
not
have
the case anymore.
The problem is you need to have a lot of overspeed to overtake in that area, basically.
That, and I think these cars are not. Again, it's the dirty.
These are
air.
not cars.
It's become
they're
a bit
boats.
too much. Yeah, and that's the shitty part of it. Maybe that changes in 2026. Anyways.
No.
So what happened was, and this was something I was very keenly following, because every time, once Lewis got close, it was, I think, on lap 40th. That was the time when he first made an attempt at when he was very close to. I think he tried a move, but then backed off because he was a bit behind. From that point onwards, Lewis was 6 to 7 tenths behind. And every time George got the launch from after turn 1, the gap would remain the same. It would drop down to 2 tenths or 3 tenths by the breaking point after the camel straight, and not more than that. If Lewis had tried for a lunge or something, I think
George was cleverly over the course of the lap through that second sector as well. I think George kind of knew Lewis was faster, because it seemed like Lewis was quicker through those traction zones the whole way through sector 2. But then as they came to the bus stop chicane at the end, George, for all of a sudden, was quicker out of the traction zones. So I think he was saving all of his battery to kind of make sure he could pull out 6 or 7 tenths at that point. And then that was just enough to hold him off until the end of sector 1, and then, repeat. George is one of the best drivers on the grid, and I'm really starting to get tired of. It's just. I think if you're coming on and you're saying Russell's not one of the top tier drivers and they should remove him,
you're saying Lewis is shit. Honestly,
no. Like you're saying Lewis is that. Generally, you're saying Lewis is brilliant in that case, right? Like my point is, it's just. If you think Russell isn't up there with the likes of like Verstappen, Leclerc, Hamilton, all those drivers, then I just don't know if we're watching the same Formula One. Or you are watching Formula One, but you're watching it with that like recency bias glasses on, where you only take into account like the last race.
You're just a fan. It's just you're a fan. And honestly,
I don't know what else he can do to prove how good he is.
Yeah, I mean,
he doesn't have the car to prove anything more.
And this was the nonsense, because again, George posted this whole emotional message on X, and I just wrote that you're one of the elite drivers. That was something I wrote. I posted it there, and there were I think 15 to 20 comments. Elite? He's not elite.
Yeah.
I mean, were we watching the same race? He beat Lewis.
I don't know
in
what
a slower car.
2023 Australia, because 2022 the car was all over the place. George was really good in 2022, right? Really good. But the car was kind of fumbly. It was all over the place. George obviously had his first win. He did some good things, like did some incredible things. But both Lewis and George, it was kind of wishy-washy the whole way through the season. You could tell the car was difficult to handle. 2023 Australia, I don't know what it was about that race, but that was the moment where I saw George in that race and I went, all right, this is the George I remember from Williams and from like his go in Sakir in the Mercedes. Another time where Mercedes unfortunately ruined things for him. George is one of the
far too many
elites.
times.
The-
And there's no
like,
doubt about it.
even just the fact that he just calmly made the call to go on this strategy, which, look,
He never
realistically,
panicked, right? At any
No.
point in time, he never panicked. And the
Yeah,
biggest thing was he actually had the trust that the team would let them race.
yep, yeah,
That's
which
the
they
big thing.
should. There was no reason
There's
not
no
to.
point. And
Yeah,
were you watching the Sky Sports feed or the F1 TV?
Sky Sports feed.
Did they make any sense? The kind of nonsense that they were saying that George should let them through. George, I mean, what the fuck are you even talking? Why?
Who said that? I think it was it Crafty or Kravitz said that? Because
No.
Brundle said it?
that.
Oh, I don't remember.
He said
that.
it. I think George would let Lewis through, and he said it when there were 7 laps left, and it didn't make sense to me that if someone is making such a huge gamble, why would he give up a win? And I don't think if
I saw
if
a lot
Toto
of
had
that
tried,
on Twitter. Yeah.
yeah.
I don't think George was letting him by anyway, to be perfectly
Yeah, he
honest.
wasn't. He wasn't going to.
No.
And Toto was never going to ask him that, especially since Lewis is leaving.
The thing that I saw this argument on Twitter a lot. To be honest with you, I didn't even recognize that on Sky Sport. The problem is I have the commentary on, but sometimes I'm just in my own head, like calculating things, and I kind of tune out what they're saying.
Which is a
Like
good
when it
thing,
gets to
honestly.
a point like this where I think because we follow F1, we make videos, like we talk on podcasts. I think a lot of the time I probably tune it out because I'm too busy watching the timing screens and trying to go, wait, why is that happening? So I just kind of blank it.
Yeah,
but
happens.
someone I got this argument on Twitter a lot, that George should have let him by when I argued that this was an incredibly
Was there #44 or LH44 in their account or the name? Yeah,
I declined to comment pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights, even though I'm not American. It was just that argument. But what I said was, look, Mercedes had the data. They knew what the situation was. So the argument was, why wouldn't you let Lewis by when Piastri was catching so quickly? But this was my point. I was like, yes, but I'm sure the data had shown Lewis was also catching Russell very, very quickly until he caught him and then couldn't pass. Verstappen and Norris were trying to pass each other for decades. Like
trying
they
to pass
knew
Leclerc as well. They couldn't do that.
And I mean, at the end of the day, worst case scenario, I don't know. There was no way that was happening. I think if Piastri had got closer at 7 laps before as opposed to 1 lap before, maybe they would have considered it because it would have been then, okay, we need to protect the win. But given how late Piastri caught, there was no point. Like they
Piastri
knew
didn't get a
exactly.
single run on Lewis, right?
He
did not even
literally
get a single run.
he got within a second on the last lap and it was too late. So I just think fans watch this and forget that these F1 teams have so much data and telemetry. They know way more than the F1 fans do. And I think the fact that Mercedes is a team that I think you can see from this race, apart from, which we'll talk about in a minute, the disqualification, Mercedes is operationally spectacular. They didn't have the fastest car yesterday, and they still ended up with what was on track a 1-2. Mercedes know what they're doing. They've known what they're doing for ages. If they had have thought we need to protect the win here, they would have called a team order. Mercedes isn't the type of team that doesn't do that. It was just, there's nothing to lose here. And it would be unfair to call a team order. So why would we call a team order? Like,
It doesn't make any
I
sense.
asked someone this. I was like, why should Hamilton get preference in that situation? Like, there's no. It's not like Hamilton's in a title fight.
You're just
There's
walking into a trap of Mercedes owes its entire success to Lewis. That's the answer
Which it
you're
doesn't.
going to get in that case.
Yeah.
Which it does not. It's actually the inverse, but we've been through that.
I've already
We've
done a
been
video
through
on this. Yeah. We've had this.
Anyways, now let's talk about the operational policy.
Yeah.
Again, whatever happened. I mean, first of all, let's get one thing straight. It was 1.5 kg lower. It should not have been. Until now, everyone has just pretty much whatever conspiracy theory or whatever you want to call it, they've gone ahead and shared it. No one knows the exact reason, and the official reason will actually come from Mercedes. So maybe let's hold our horses on that front, because I've seen far too many theories. First of all, the theory is that Mercedes is running illegal cars, and that's not the case. Let's not go there. Second thing, a lot of them have used that since George extended his stint, he lost 1.5 kg of rubber, which is basically 0.375 kg from each wheel.
Grams
which seems a bit
per wheel, yeah.
Yeah, which seems a bit much. I think this is something that any team would have as a
Apparently,
buffer.
it's not. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah,
I was just gonna say,
and
apparently, it's not that much. Like that is how much they kind of expect to lose on the tires, and that's why they pick up rubber. Apparently, that's fairly
yeah, they didn't
normal.
have that here, right? So that also maybe
Yeah.
played a role. But the thing is, a team like Mercedes kind of has these calculations in place. It's not like a one stopper came out of the blue. It must have been in discussions. So yeah, of course, it happened. Now I'm not going to go too deep into this because these are technical stuffs, and honestly, even though I am
Well,
supposedly a mechanical engineer, I have zero idea what the why the
well,
fuck this happened.
I can just say a few things because there was a few
Go ahead.
arguments on Twitter and so on. So let's just clarify a few things. First of all, some people have tried to say that they underfueled the car and stuff to do with fuel and everything else. Just to point out one glaring issue with that argument, fuel is not counted in that. So it's the minimum weight is 798 kilos before you add fuel. So underfueling the car should have made no difference. Second of all, they weigh the car when it goes into Parc Ferme, I believe on Saturday. So the car would have been weighed on Saturday and the mechanics then can't touch it. They can't go near it basically until Sunday. So it's not like they can just take bits off the car. The other thing is, some people have said that Mercedes basically tried to cheat. If Mercedes tried to cheat, they are the worst cheaters in the world. One, because they got caught. And two, because the reason they got caught is because they went back to the FIA in their scrutineering form and said that the weight was done when the car wasn't completely drained. So the car was drained of 2.8 litres of fuel, and then they have to hand over documents, the team's self-scrutineer, and in the self-scrutineering, Mercedes said the car hadn't been drained completely, and that meant that the FIA someone in the FIA was triggered then to go drain it completely and check the car again for weight, which is when they were caught. So if they were trying to cheat, they are the worst cheaters in the world because they could have just said, yeah, fully drained, and just hope that no one checked. So they didn't cheat. The thing about the tires is, yes, it could have been the tires because of the pickup, so perhaps that is the case. Some people have pointed
Yeah,
out
but
as
Mercedes would have accounted for it, right? Don't you think?
sure, but some people pointed out as I did as well, like other drivers like Alonso and so on went on to, and I've thought about this over the last while, right? Because if it is the tires, then you expect Alonso and so on to be in that situation. But I think if we look at Mercedes over the past while, with George running out of fuel, for example, on a qualifying lap, these types of things, I think Aston and VCarb, they're probably doing their weight calculations a little bit more conservatively. And I think that because Mercedes is in that McLaren, Red Bull, Ferrari front pack, and we know it's like a tenth in the difference every weekend or 2/10, Mercedes seem to be going a lot finer to that, like, trying to get every last thing out of it. And I think it's just a simple human error that basically someone just didn't account, because remember, like, George called it late. They probably just simply overlooked. There's so many things they have to do. Simple overlook that shit at the end of this race, there's no pickup. And it was just, fuck, we messed up the calculations. I don't think the long rant is to say, this is not
No
Mercedes cheating.
malpractice, honestly.
No, it's just a simple miscalculation, I think, and a really unfortunate one. But when you're running that fine to the limit, these things happen. It's
Also,
just,
there's another simpler reason why Aston and maybe RB also, they didn't really fail in the scrutiny. The reason is probably because they're already overweight. So
that's
they might
which is
not
my
even
point.
be at 7.
Yeah.
No, as in they are essentially an overweight car because not every
So it
car
doesn't
is
make any
at,
difference.
Yeah, they might already be at 802, 80, whatever. So it
Which is
doesn't really
my
make any-
point. I think for them, maybe their tires were just as worn, but essentially, as you said, like, they were at 800 kilos, so you drop a kilo and a half, it doesn't make any difference. They're still over
I
the
think
weight.
one thing I actually wanted to ask, if someone is actually someone has to be inside FIA to actually answer these questions. What if there's a nut or screw that actually fell off the car, and something like that comes out in the inventory after you dismantle a car?
I mean, technically, we'll get that answer from Mercedes, but I think
That's the thing.
Mercedes did say, I think it was Andrew Shovlin said after the race that as far as they were aware, there was no damage or issue to the car. So I think that's why it's pointing mostly to the tires. Yeah. The other thing is, I don't know what happened, but at the start of the race, I don't know if you saw Hamilton's car dumped some liquid as it was coming out of the pits to go, or as it was off the formation lap, I think as well, or coming out of the pits at some point. But nothing came of it.
Didn't notice.
But perhaps, I mean, like 1.5 kilos isn't a huge amount. So, like, I mean, maybe there was some liquid dumped somewhere by accident, you know, like
Could have
obviously
happened.
not fuel, but something else.
Yeah.
It's such a small amount when you think about a kilo. A kilo and a half, I think, in my head at first sounded like a lot. But when you think about it, that's a tiny amount of weight to drop, you know.
And now comes the more important question. Apparently, the scientists of Twitter have already declared that if George did not have if he did not have a lighter car, he would not have been able to hold off Lewis, because apparently 1.5 kgs means a 2-second advantage over the entire race. And if those 2-second advantage was not there, Lewis would have overtaken. So
I think people don't understand how you would apply 2 seconds over the course of a race then.
Precisely.
Because if it's 2 seconds over the course of a race, that's not like we can just, if we just calculate that 2 seconds in this lap, it's like that. No, it's then 2 seconds over the course of a race. Now, technically, that 2 seconds would mean it's 0.045 seconds per lap, I believe is the calculation, which in itself, before anyone starts arguing, is also wrong, because the calculation per lap isn't consistent across every track. It depends on the high-speed nature of the track and the corners you're going through as well. So
also,
at
if you
Spa,
encounter traffic, you lose time.
yes. So at Spa, if you were just running in clean air from start to finish, it's a high-speed track, so it would actually be closer to 0.02 seconds, which means it's only 1 second per lap, or sorry, for the whole race, not per lap. So I don't think, even if we say the high end, even if we say let's say 0.05 seconds per lap, right? Lewis was 8 fucking tenths faster in the second sector than George. That's 0.8, right? That's not 0.08. Yes, that's 1 lap. So if we say 0.05 difference per lap, it's not enough to make the difference of a race win at all.
More importantly, and more importantly, Lewis had 4 to 5 laps to overtake George. He could not.
Yeah.
Add one more lap, there was nothing new that was going to happen.
Yeah. So 2 seconds over the course of a race.
Yeah.
And to be honest, it should be more close. It should be, I think, closer to a second over the course of Spa because of how Spa's laid out. It's not 2 seconds.
The thing is, even in the worst case scenario, what you can do is you can give 2 laps grace to that maybe Lewis would have caught up to George maybe 2 laps earlier. But the point is, okay, fine, he would have caught up. Worst case scenario. I mean, just a worst case scenario, just conceding the point for that. Okay, what I'm trying to say is, what I'm trying to say is, even if that was the case, he was not overtaking George. The reason behind it is the gap in setup, which meant that George had the car on the straights and Lewis was not closing the gap as quickly as he could have. It meant that it was not... He didn't have the opportunity to overtake. He never got alongside. And if he did not get alongside for 4 to 5 laps, it's not going to be something drastically different in 2 other laps. It's not going to be the case. And people have written essays, literally
all
essays
of this is
on this
all of
whole
this
nonsense.
is assuming as well that the car was overweight going into the race, which, as I said earlier, it probably wasn't, because it would have been weighed after qualifying or at some point during qualifying. So
So something happened, right? That's the whole thing. Something happened, and
I think the
could be
tires
case,
is probably
right?
the most obvious solution. I think
Seems like it for now.
Yeah.
But again, you know, why I'm slightly still skeptical when it comes to, nailing down that, okay, this is the reason why it all happened. It's because all these nuts and bolts, they're part of the inventory, right? But when the car is weighed, something as minuscule as this, it cannot be picked up. Again, that's my very novice brain pointing this out, but it cannot be picked up.
I know what you mean. Like, they'll disassemble it, but
they have
look,
to
the simple fact though
dismantle
is
the entire car.
the simple fact though is, even if we said it was 3 seconds over the course of the lap or of the race,
Yeah.
Hamilton still had an advantage with tire weight or tire wear, and he was catching it, like you said earlier, at 8/10 a lap. So the weight is not the reason that George won that race. George won that race because he was
The better driver.
I'm not going to say George, just like the two of them. This is the
I'm
thing
going to
that
say
I
he was
think.
the better driver. Honestly, because look, it's. I mean, we keep playing the whole game. It's just that at some point we have to understand what George did. First of all,
George
it
was
was
better
a gamble.
strategically and defensively
Yes.
there. He was amazing. I'll
Yeah.
give you that. The reason I'd say they were pretty even is I think that, yes, Lewis had an advantage of higher downforce in qualifying, but at the same time, Lewis did deliver at the start of the race in qualifying.
100%.
Like the
100%,
thing
yeah.
is, I think at the moment they're pretty close to one another. I think there's at every single race weekend, the difference between George and Hamilton is so fine at the moment.
Precisely.
The only thing I would say is, if you look at their trajectory as drivers, I kind of think it is just a case of one is going up and one will come down, because that's how aging
Ultimately,
works in
yeah.
Formula One. So,
I mean, yeah, we'll talk about Lewis's future as well. But before we talk about his future, let's talk about his immediate
Current race.
past. Because, I mean, and I actually, again...
was he given
wrote
a
about
bad
the whole-
strategy and ruined by Mercedes?
Oh, God. Should I even talk about... I mean, one has to be galactically stupid to actually assume something like this when 8 out of 10 drivers in the top 10 did that. And I'll tell you something. If Lewis
It was
had
the
done
best
something
race
like this,
strategy.
yeah, that was the strategy for 8 of the top 10 drivers. And if Lewis had not done that, and if he had stayed out, first of all, one very basic thing, and if there is a Lewis Hamilton fan watching, try to understand one very, very fucking basic thing.
There's not going to be one watch.
Yeah. If you are in P1, you don't gamble on going long. You cover off the drivers that you are directly competing with. What George did was pull off a
Was
masterstroke.
gambled.
Yeah. And honestly, first of all, I actually have to say this thing. Coffeehead is one of the Lewis Hamilton fans, and he, something that he wrote was
There are a
quite
lot of
amazing.
reasonable
Yeah.
Lewis Hamilton
And they
fans, by the
follow
way.
us, by the
And
way. They follow us and subscribe to us.
Coffeehead is one of those reasonable Formula One fans where
Yeah.
me and him have had arguments on Twitter, but it's always a friendly argument. I think,
Precisely.
well,
He's logical.
Sometimes.
He's logical,
Sometimes
man.
I can be
That's
a
what I
bastard,
want.
though. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, there's no arguing with that.
I mean, I'm a bit of a prick, so yeah.
Yeah. It's part of it. It's just part of it. But again, the assumption that he was given the wrong strategy, fuck off. That was not the case. He was given the optimum strategy. George found an alternative way and he executed it perfectly. Now, leaving all that aside, Lewis Hamilton started the which one was it? Belgian Grand Prix. See, I'm already in the future. So
Yeah.
Lewis Hamilton started the Belgian Grand Prix weekend with a quote. Again, since, throughout the race weekend, I have to write a lot of articles. And I think I wrote that fucking quote far too many times. So his quote for Max Verstappen was, a world champion when a car is actually moving on from being a dominant car to a car which is competitive with the rivals. A world champion has to be a team leader and a team player. And then he said, well, in Hungary, Max Verstappen was not that.
Yeah.
Okay, it's fine. This is what his view is, and apparently he is stuck with it. So I wrote an entire article pointing out when he's not been a world champion. I didn't even have to do that. Just 2 days later, here we have Lewis Hamilton. First of all, I think he first talked about it at, who was it? It was Gunther Steiner. In front of him, what Lewis Hamilton said was, they brought me in every time when I thought I had tires to actually go longer. Okay, fine, you want to do that. Every next interview that he did, the intensity of him subtly blaming the team, it kept on increasing. And by the way, there was no, since the entire you can say, the investigation around George, it happened a bit later, right? So if you remember, there was no team photo. Lewis did not really what should we call it? He did not reply or even announce or even acknowledge the fact that he'd won the race at least a few hours after everything became official. Now, why did this happen? As soon as the press conference ended, he was gone.
Yeah.
He didn't stay with the team. There was no group photo or anything. He didn't want to stay for that. First of all, you start the weekend by saying that you have to be a team player, you have to be a team leader, whatever. And then just the moment a thing does not go your way, first of all, you throw the team under the bus in front of the media, and you don't even stick back for even the team photo. It's typical Lewis, honestly. Honestly speaking, it's typical Lewis, but it's why?
To be honest as well, like the thing is, it's a situation where most F1 drivers in that situation would be pissed off as well. Most of them would 100%. say, we need to look at this as a team, or they'd say the team strategy, I'm not sure about, I'd need to look at it afterwards, or something along those lines. Vettel probably would have said, the team screwed it, or something like that in his last year, because you know what he was like. Alonso would have said the team fucked up. So the thing is, Lewis saying that, but no, Lewis saying that and being... Sorry. No, this is the thing. Lewis saying that and being annoyed doesn't bother me at all. It really doesn't. This is the thing I constantly talk about. Lewis, I'm completely fine with. It's a subsection, and I'm saying this specifically. It's a subsection of his fan base that are absolutely the most delusional wankers in the world. And by the way, there is a similar subsection for Max Verstappen. So don't start
Charles, Alonso, Carlos, and apparently Checo as well. All of them have that.
Probably every driver, just most of them we don't pay attention to for certain periods of time. Maybe not Oscar because he's new. Lando definitely does have that fan base as well. I've seen some of the Lando fans.
God, they are idiots.
So like, the problem is, it's that subset, that crazy subset of the fan base that just has to have these arguments. That then the problem is, it puts that expectation, and then what happens is, certain journalists pick up that expectation, certain British journalists. They ask Hamilton these questions directly. And of course, then he says things like, oh, well, yeah, of course, if you want to be a champion, you have to be a team player, says this. And now all of a sudden, it's in all of our heads that, well, where's this team player attitude then? So then he looks like a prick because you basically get this line coming down. Whereas I think with Max, the one thing I liked... Right.
I heard the audio. It was not like any which way that he actually talked about. I mean, look at you shielding Lewis here. I mean, fucking Lewis Hamilton fan.
I'm a massive Lewis Hamilton fanboy, you know that.
Yeah. So, I mean, he was on a mission throughout the race weekend. He also had another ticket, Max, and apparently he also said that Max, out of the blue, he wasn't... Max is nowhere in the conversation. He was questioned, okay, Lewis, if you were in place of Lando, what would you have done in Hungary? Said, oh, I don't know. I know Max would not have followed the orders. What the fuck?
You know what though? I'm sorry, but
I'm fine with it. Look, I wish
all the drivers would do this again. You've watched Formula One as long as I have.
I'm fine with it.
No, I'm just saying.
I'm completely fine with it. My only issue is...
Do you not miss that though? Do you not miss all the drivers hating each other? Remember, these were better days.
Honestly,
they didn't hate each other, but they were always like taking shots at one another.
Yeah,
it was brilliant. It was brilliant in the 2000s, and now it's all, well, you know, he's just doing a good thing for his team, and it's like, oh, fuck off, shout at him.
I'm fine with it. I have no issues. But the thing is, just 2 days back, you preached everyone, you should be a team player, you should do this, you should do that. Just 1 day later, you've completely thrown the team under the bus and you fucked off. You've not even stayed back on the last race before the summer break. When the entire team gets together. Please, don't give me the nonsense of being a team player and stuff. You're not. And honestly, neither is Fernando Alonso, neither is any of the top drivers. They're all bastards.
None of the top tier drivers are team players.
Yeah, but the thing is, no one is going to sit and preach.
Let's be honest here. Even Lando Norris, like in Hungary, he gave that position back not for the good of the team, but because basically over the rate. Exactly. That's what happened there. Eventually his brain went, fuck, what if I do catch up to Max and we're in the last race and there's 6 points and I need Oscar to give me the position? You know, like that. He was there for enough laps that that went through his brain. So like, yeah, none of the top tier drivers are team players. So I don't know anyone who has that illusion is wrong.
Yeah. So just to conclude this point, if according to Lewis Hamilton, a world champion has to be someone who is a team player, a team leader, tries to gather the troops. This is Lewis Hamilton's definition, by the way. Did he act like a world champion after Spa? Say no, you idiot.
Yes, he did. He was a fantastic team player, and he was just pointing out. So no, he didn't.
Precisely.
No.
And that's my whole point. And why I am stressing on it, because look, I'm fine with him taking shots. By the way, again, a very important question. Why do you think he's taking shots at Max now? He's not done that for a long time, by the way.
Yeah, I don't know.
He took shots in Hungary as well. Again, he also took shots in Hungary where he said that Max
because
always makes it personal.
They're in a similar race again and they're contacting each other and stuff.
Precisely.
Yeah.
He now sees him as a rival and he's going to try to gain any which way possible. He's trying to gain an advantage. I love that. By the way, I love that bit. And
Hamilton,
by the way,
plays that long game and those mental games so much.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I don't think he gets enough credit for it because, to be fair, he does it quite subtly. Like, do you remember was it Hungary in 2021 during qualifying where he came out of the pit real slow?
Yeah.
And like Hamilton does play those games, but for some reason, you don't hear people talking about him playing those games as much. He does play them all the time, though. Like he's constantly calculating.
He did that with Vettel as well. I mean, he said that Bottas and Valtteri and I can compete. But I'm telling you, in Vettel's contract, he's written as a number one driver. He's done that with Vettel as well. I mean, he's done that throughout his career. Because, anyways, that's not the point. I think one thing that actually I liked about Lewis was he missed out on a win, and he was pissed. And this is a driver who has won 104 races. And that shows you where the mentality is there, and hats off for that. And
if he got out of that car and like. He should be. I think he did obviously say congratulations to George, as he should be, but he should be annoyed.
He didn't read the team, by the way.
No, I know. Yeah, but he should be annoyed there. Like, it's one of the things I think we say about Leclerc the whole time.
I think honestly it's on him. This is something that's on him. He had the car. He should have either pulled the move or tried or attempted to pull the move. Either dive bomb after the Camel Straight, do something, because if you're not doing that, you're ceding a win. And if you want to be pissed afterwards, maybe pissed afterwards that you've lost the win after you tried everything. He didn't really try everything. So it's on him as well.
Well,
anyways,
the only thing
lot
I'll
of
say
Mercedes. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
The strategy, though, getting back to the strategy, it was the perfect ideal strategy from Mercedes. And anyone who said otherwise is a bit of a moron in my view, because
Not a bit.
A lot of them moron. They're a complete moron. The simple calculation, if you want to just figure out whether it was the right strategy or not, is if you took Russell out of the race, which you did, was Hamilton winning that race? Which he did. So I mean, if Russell's not there and Hamilton follows the exact same strategy, he's winning the race. So that's that.
He might or he might not.
Why?
Because we don't know
how because of the DRS train. Yeah, true.
We don't know how well he's managed the tires, right? That's also.
Well, I just mean on pure pace. Look at the end, how quick he was
on pure pace.
To
yes,
Russell.
But again, there are a lot of things here. His setup, the setup that he had in terms of being a high downforce car. If somehow Oscar Piastri had caught up with him in the end, Oscar Piastri would have sailed through because he had a decent advantage on the straight line.
With no DRS, maybe, yeah.
And that's a big thing. And maybe not. But the point is,
it was the optimal strategy for where he was. Regardless.
And we have to keep it in mind. It's, after Monday morning quarterbacking is something people do a lot. But you have to give credit where it's due. Mercedes did all the right things except the 1.5 kgs.
But like even George's call, it was like Mercedes had been talking to George, and George knew that essentially if he stayed on the one stop, he was likely ending up P5, and if he went for a two stop, he was likely ending up P5. So George basically said, well, why don't we just try with the track, like with the clean air and see what happens.
Roll the dice.
And Mercedes were like, yeah, well, we'll roll the dice, but it's not really a gamble because, I mean, we're P5 one way or P5 the other way.
Anyway.
Yeah, so Mercedes just did everything right this weekend, and
Yeah.
I understand why
They've done
Lewis
it
is pissed
a
off.
few times,
But,
by the way.
yeah, like,
I mean,
I
yeah,
understand why Lewis
Lewis
is pissed off, but any fans who think Mercedes screwed him or Mercedes did this, Mercedes did that, it's like
I
Mercedes
think
did
there's a bigger case
everything
of
right.
sabotage that a George Russell fan would have. The last three races.
I posted this yesterday. I said,
Yeah.
why is there no fans going Mercedes are sabotaging Russell now? Because the
Look, if the
exact
last-
logic
yeah.
that you had on Hamilton, you could apply right now. Like there's
I mean, this is the
Silence.
perfect time for an email saying the whole thing where Toto loves Lewis and blah 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 and all that nonsense. But anyways, a lot of Mercedes talk. We're already an hour into it.
yes.
So-
let's move on.
Yeah, cutting that out. Let's talk about the Mercedes customer team, McLaren, and again Oscar finished P. Yeah, it's P
P2
second now.
after
Yeah.
yeah.
Again, Lando gets a lot of hate anyways, but what the fuck is he doing at the starts? How many races has it been now that every time he loses positions at the start? And that ended his race basically. After that.
Yeah, there was a race or two where I kind of said, look, McLaren need to get on top of this, because there was a race or two where the clutch or the gear mapping or something seemed to be off. But now, after all these races, it's like Piastri is getting the great start alongside him every time. So you can't really blame the team. And I don't know why Norris went wide into the gravel there. Like, clearly a miscalculation.
That bit, yeah.
Clearly just a mistake. Look, the thing is, we're very hard on these drivers. Mistakes do happen, but we also should be hard on these drivers because mistakes can't happen if they want to be world champions. It's fine margins. So the problem is Norris is in a weird situation now where he needs to kind of be careful, because like he is still the better driver on tire management, but Piastri is now very, very good and very, very close and getting better every race. He is still technically the faster driver, but Piastri is very close, if not right on there pace-wise. Yeah. And like Norris cannot be in a situation where he screws up the race starts, because if that happens if they go into 2025 with the fastest car and he loses the race off the start for the first three races and Piastri is the winner, all of a sudden Piastri becomes the driver that is the favoured, because McLaren will make the only reasonable decision in 2025, which is whoever's leading in the points gets preference. That's the only way to run something like that. So Norris can't afford this right now. My only hope for Norris is perhaps it is a situation of just mindset where, like, at the start of this season, there was no thoughts about running for race wins and a race championship. And I think the pressure kind of leveled on very quickly after the race win, where he now thinks of it as a title fight. And I think that pressure change has got to him, maybe. We've seen this with drivers in the past where, like Vettel, for example, the pressure mounts. So maybe the summer break is coming at the right time for him to kind of go away and reset his confidence level and come back. But it's not great.
By the way,
it's not great.
By the way, the gap between Oscar and Lando now in the championship, guess how many points it is?
I haven't checked. I know Verstappen's 2 points ahead again.
Just
what
30,
is it?
30, 35. That's it.
Okay. Yeah.
And at one point, Oscar almost had double the points. Lando had almost double the points of Oscar. So the gap is decreasing, and it's decreasing fast.
Oscar's figured out his tire management, basically.
Until I have a direct comparison between Lando and Oscar, where their races are not impacted the manner in which it was in Spa, I'll still hold my horses on this one.
I still
Spa
think
is an Oscar Piastri track. He was second last year as well in sprint. So.
And also, like in Hungary, clearly Oscar had some issues because he had that off and so on.
Yeah.
But it's definitely a lot closer than it was, because if we think back earlier in the season, Oscar was nowhere on tires, nowhere. And his pace was
huge.
there. Yeah.
I think the biggest worry for Lando right now is, again, remember we talked about this a lot, that this season, whatever races are left, they are stress tests for McLaren and Norris. What if it becomes a stress test for McLaren and Oscar Piastri? Because the trajectory is heading towards that direction only. And Lando has to be careful. But second thing that again, I think I've beaten this point to the death far too many times. When was the last time Max Verstappen lost a position on the first lap? It was in Qatar Sprint in 2023. Sorry, 2024. It's been, I think, 17, 18 races.
No,
that he's not
2023. Yeah.
Yeah, 2023. Yeah,
Yeah.
fuck it. So since that day, since it's been 17 or 18 events or more than that, including sprints, 20 plus events, where Max has not lost a position on the first lap. And that is a stunning record. But you know what's the most important part in this? Max is a driver who has nailed everything, and this is the beast you're competing with. He does not have any weakness. And if you're going to basically leave points on the table, you're not beating Max. And
This is the thing about, like, in general, world champions over the past while. Like, it is just the person who can more consistently get everything right than who wins. And like, that was Lewis at the start of every season over, you know, the last 10 is always that kind of guy who warms up. But that works for him because while he's warming up, he's also not throwing points away. He's still kind of maximizing things, but it's just not at the limit of what he can do. Yeah. And Lewis and Max have both, like, when you think about Lewis and Max over the times when they're winning championships, there's so few mistakes to talk about. Like, there's so few. And with Lando, if we even talk about the last 7 races, basically every single race that he's lost has been lost in the first few laps. Like, but in the first lap or
Hungary.
Yep.
These are just two
Spa.
off the top of my head. Spa. I'm not sure what would have happened in Spa, but maybe he could have won.
I think he could have won the race if he had got off the line properly.
If we are assuming that he'll have a better race pace than Oscar, then maybe yes. But again, it's still an if, and there are far too many ifs with with Lando. Yeah. Okay, tell me something. What is the best driver lineup in F1 right now?
Well, as of today, it's Sainz and Albon, isn't it? No, I'm joking. At the moment, I think personally, it's probably still Hamilton and Russell, but but Piastri and Norris, I think is not far off. Like, there's not a huge gap between them. I know people are throwing stats and all these wins, but I'm talking about the actual performance on track per race. Yeah. You know, like,
I mean, they can fuck off. Honestly, I've seen far too much nonsense on Twitter that last 3 races, Lewis Hamilton has done this. I mean, for fuck's sakes, we are starting to do last 3 races now to basically jump to conclusions.
Just, you can make any stats work over a specific time as long as you want to work for you.
Because
like,
if you have an agenda, you're going to do that anyways.
It's like, what is it? 82% of statistics are made up on the spot. You know, like, it's just
precisely.
You can conform any stat. Like, basically, it's like, oh yeah, he's won the last 2 out of the 3 races or whatever. It's like, cool. Of the last 3 seasons, he's been winless in 2. Like, you know, does that stat mean anything? It's like, no, because the car's not been there. Like, stats are useless. If we're just talking about actual on-track performance, the 2 best team
very close
lineups are Oscar and Norris, but I think Russell and Hamilton are still ahead.
I agree
but I would
with
say
you.
I don't think it's a huge margin, if I'm honest.
I think one thing that is quite obvious is the Oscar Norris lineup has scope for improvement, while the Lewis Russell lineup is basically firing on all cylinders, and that is a big difference between the two.
Mm-hmm.
One more thing, do you think McLaren is reaching a point where it's starting to think that maybe it needs a different lineup?
No, I think McLaren is probably really happy with their lineup. Like, I mean, they're not going to get a better lineup anyway. Like, unless they get Max Verstappen or Hamilton or... Yeah, but like, I mean, unless they get Hamilton or Max or someone like that, then there's not really any other upgrades on the field for them at the minute.
The market, right?
Sure, yeah.
That's why I raised this question.
But the thing is, do they get Max? I don't know. See, the problem is McLaren, I don't know, is shelling out the amount of money that Max would want either. But maybe. I guess probably, actually. They are owned by Bahrain. Yeah. The problem I see for McLaren is more that I'm just worried that they're not cutthroat enough that I think what's going to happen is getting everything right could also be their downfall in 2025. Like, I think it's a situation where kind of like 2007 again, where they've got two brilliant drivers, right? They then get the car that is by far and away. Say, let's hypothetically say they continue on this trajectory. They keep getting better, which they might not. They could hit a limit. But let's say next year they come out with the dominant car, right? They've got the two best drivers, the dominant car. And let's say then they get rid of these little niggles and strategic blunders that they're making, which at the moment for me is acceptable.
It could
because
happen. I mean, we've seen with Red Bull, right? Red Bull had far too many disasters from 2010. 11,
yeah,
right?
Mercedes 2012, 2013, like, you know, not as much, but, you know, these things happen, and then you become a world championship team when you kind of get rid of all of the issues.
Yeah.
Or you go the opposite way and you build a good car and fuck it up like Ferrari. But McLaren could be in an unenviable position next year of having two drivers in a kind of Hamilton-Rosberg situation where they have the fastest car and they've got two very good drivers. Either or could be the number one. And I am really concerned that McLaren, like, the obvious option is you say to them, right, guys, you've got 4 or 5 races to fight this out, and whoever's leading after 4 or 5 races will get preferential strategy, preferential team orders. It's up to you to
driver
win.
Would take it.
No, but like the point is that if the team do that, then it's a difficult situation because they can call different strategies. They can fuck around with stuff. They can do whatever they want, you know. But the point is you can get the best mechanics and everything to one side of it. We've seen teams do it. And when you're going for a driver's championship, you kind of have to have that ruthlessness, like of, okay, this driver is now the lead. And I don't think Zach Brown's McLaren have that. And maybe you could argue in Hungary that the fairness is the idea, that they're kind of saying, look, we'll back you for a championship when it comes to it, but for right now, play the team game. But
I mean,
a world championship team says, Oscar, we fucked up. Norris is ahead. He's taking the lead. We'll make it up to you. A world championship team doesn't say
Ross Brawn doing that, honestly. I could almost assume Ross Brawn basically getting on the... I mean, he did it in... I mean, everyone remembers Malaysia 2013 as a race where Seb did the whole multi-21 thing. But behind him, Mercedes also did the same thing, where they told Rosberg to hold station for Lewis.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's why the entire podium was as sad as probably the one in Hungary recently. So, I mean, that is one condition that you're putting, that you're assuming. I'm assuming the condition which is similar to what we have this season.
One driver leading.
No. You have cars that are very close. Mm-hmm. Do you think McLaren is looking at a scenario where it wants a different driver? That's what my question is.
No, like I mean, okay. So
because
Norris
why I ask this question is because look, Max Verstappen is on the market. Everyone knows it.
Mm-hmm.
He's on the market. Whether he'll commit to Red Bull or not is something that's still speculative. Or whether he'll go to... I don't think he'll go to Mercedes, but that's a different discussion. My point
I'm
is
dubious about that as well.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. My thing is, will McLaren... Because look, McLaren in IndyCar, it has been an asshole. Zach Brown has been a complete fucking asshole because he's picked up a driver on Monday, dropped him on Friday. That's what he's done far too many times. If he's that ruthless here in Formula 1, could he do something similar where he either drops an Oscar or a Lando and just tries to throw everything at Max and tell him that, look, we have the fastest car. You can bring GP along. There's nothing that's going to change. Woking and Milton Keynes are not too far, not too far apart. Maybe come over. Do you think he'll try something like that?
So who do you drop?
I'll drop Lando.
See, I don't think so.
Because the reason why I'll drop Lando is because Oscar has shown the ability to be pliable. Lando has not.
Yeah, for now. I mean, like, Oscar's been the driver behind Norris catching up. But like, as soon as Oscar becomes the faster driver...
if Oscar and Max are in the same car, who are you betting on?
This is the problem though, because you're basing this all. The problem I have is I don't know what Oscar's potential is, because look how fucking good he is after a season and a half. For all we know, in another season,
He's good. He's brilliant. He's not Max.
For all we know,
what I'll say.
I genuinely think you give Oscar 2 or 3 more seasons, I think he's fighting Max without issue. I think he's got that raw pace, and he's also got the advantage of.
You know why?
He's
I
very
always
calm in the
stop
car.
when it comes to this is because I've seen Max step until Oscar, and maybe to an extent George as well. Race pace has been something that I have not seen drivers have an issue with.
Yeah.
Leclerc jumped into a Ferrari and he won in his very first season, and he had the legs on Seb as well. Max, from his very first season, he had issues with qualifying. He had no issues with race pace, because race pace is something that you can adapt to much better compared to this. That's what makes me feel a bit.
Let's be honest here as well, though. Max is not going to McLaren after what he saw at Hungary anyway.
Why?
Because Max will only go to a team if he is the out-and-out number one driver at the minute.
Look, if that is the case, why do you think a Mercedes is even an option? I mean, it should not even be a discussion in that case.
No, like, it shouldn't be, because Russell is the number one. Like, I don't get why there's a conversation
Russell is the number one, and I don't think Russell is the Daniel Ricciardo of Mercedes.
Yes, and it's annoying.
I'm telling you,
but
this
it's
is
really
this is
annoying.
My prediction.
But does that not really annoy you? Because it doesn't make any sense. Like, Russell was brought in to be Lewis Hamilton's replacement. That was always the position. And what Russell has done over the past 3 seasons has basically proven that he can be that Hamilton replacement. And for some reason, the team is like, yes, well, we want Max Verstappen. Like, surely Russell has to be thinking, fuck this, I'm out of here. Like,
no, I have a theory, by the way, for this. And the theory is that Mercedes has data in front of them, and what they've seen is over the years Lewis has deteriorated, and what they have is a driver who is as good as Lewis. But if Lewis has deteriorated from a level that he used to be, then maybe George is not that good. Yeah, that's what I think. And honestly, I was a bit surprised that Toto was not even too happy or jubilant after George won this time around. I mean, he was on the phone afterwards and all that. It's more of a stepson treatment that George is kind of getting ever since he's joined Mercedes. And I don't think, and honestly, I won't be surprised if maybe by 2026, when George's contract is done, he might give Audi a look. Maybe build a team around himself.
I feel sorry for George if that is the case, because I just don't feel like maybe there is data, like you said, but I can't see any reasoning for that. Yeah. He's spectacular.
I think he's good. Yeah. But again, why? And there's somewhere where I think I understand Toto's point, because Leclerc stepped into Ferrari and there were races where he completely demolished Seb. And that is coming from a Seb fan, by the way. He demolished Seb in a lot of those races. And he showed the prodigious talent that Max showed earlier. I think these are the 2 drivers that I can say that immediately stepped into Formula 1 and like this, they are going to be world champions. I haven't seen that with George in that manner. I haven't seen him completely destroy Lewis even once. Maybe, probably because I'm being a bit... I think I'm wrong in this.
I don't know though.
I think my image is far too skewed by the nonsense of experimental setups.
I think so too, because
that is the biggest problem.
If you look at every single race where Mercedes could have won, George was right there. Like, there's no Silverstone. He had the water leak, so he didn't have a chance to finish that race and see how he'd get on. But he was fighting well there. This race, he did win.
Silverstone, he lost the lead because he had water leak.
Yeah. So,
I mean, he was going to win the race. Again, people might say that Lewis is the bestest ever wet weather driver and the greatest to walk on earth. But the point is, Russell lost the lead earlier because instantly the issue happened. And they tried to basically pushed through it, but then he had to give up. That was why the entire thing happened. So maybe he might have won. Who knows?
Yep. Like, there's been so many races where, like, I don't know, like Lewis is ahead right now, but in the standings. But again, you can't just take that because this is 2 retirements for Russell.
Races where Mercedes could have won, and out of them, two races, George had to retire. So, I mean, the points are nonsense. If again, I
but then
do
look,
the entire
20,
driver ratings,
2022,
George is fourth right now.
2022, the only race where Mercedes realistically had a car that could win, Russell won that race. Like, there'll be tons of arguments of Hamilton fans. You could say if this, if that. But the fact is, like, Russell was ahead in these races. Like, even Singapore, okay, Russell bottled it. But the car was
ahead.
He was ahead, and the car was clearly difficult to drive. And let's be honest, Hamilton didn't win that race either. So, like, you could then go, oh, well, if they let him past and whatever, it's like, sure, if Sainz, if Sainz let Russell past, he would have won as well. So, like, you know, let's leave silly arguments out of this. Like, so it's just, I don't know. Like, I just don't know what else Russell can do.
Yeah, I'm not saying that Toto is doing the right thing by giving him.
No, you're just saying that's how it looks. Yeah. I completely 100% agree that unfortunately that's how it looks, and this is why I think personally I'm not even a George Russell fan, right? Like I'm not, and
it makes it hard.
And this is, him, right? I bet you Sai now is going to be Jason. I'm not a Russell fan. Hassad after this, isn't he?
Yeah.
But yeah, like, because I feel like every week I'm like, I'm not a Verstappen. I'm not a Hamilton. I'm not.
Yeah.
But like, I'm not some George fan or anything, and
yeah. You have to appreciate talent, to be honest. You have to appreciate talent.
Well, it's just like he's done everything. Like, even when he was put in Sakhir, like, he should have won that race and Mercedes screwed it. Like, this is another race Mercedes screwed it and, like, didn't account
George
for things or didn't do things.
How many? He could have had 4 career wins by now.
Was it this weekend or last weekend when he ran out of fuel in qualifying? Was that this weekend?
Last weekend.
Was it Hungary, right? So, like, there again,
almost the second toughest track to overtake. And
so there again, he could have been qualified ahead. You know what I mean? So, like,
yeah,
I just, if the Hamilton fans who talked about sabotage were Russell fans, right now, surely they would be all saying this is Russell sabotage, because it's
then an email would have been sent by now.
Yeah, so, like.
And again,
I just don't know what else Russell can do.
Just to set the record straight, now I do the entire driver rankings. So the accumulation after the first 14 races has George at, I think George is at 4th or 5th. I'll tell you right now. He's at 4th or 5th, and Lewis is in. Okay, George is at 5th, joint 4th actually. Lewis is 9th. And why Lewis is 9th is because he had a shitty first part of the season. And everyone forgets that. But the problem is, at that point in time, the car was so poor. George could only score 2 to 3 points per race. And that's why it doesn't really count anymore. So, I mean, yeah, look.
It's why the points
everything
are skewed,
is very subjective.
Like, yeah.
But anyways, again, I think we didn't really get to the final bit. Do you think McLaren...
I love it. Actually, now I think about it, we went back to Mercedes and Russell. Anyway, McLaren.
Yeah, McLaren. Do you think it will try to sign someone like do you think it will aggressively approach a Max Verstappen? And if he does, should Max consider it?
I think Max should consider it just because it looks like they're on a trajectory for a good car. But I don't think McLaren I just get the feeling McLaren wouldn't personally push for a Max. I'm not sure why. I just don't. I think they've set their lineup and they're more concerned about put it this way. I think that McLaren think that if they have the right car and they don't make strategy blunders, that either of those two drivers could win them a championship. I think they've kind of made that decision because, like, you got to say, like, Lando, for example, like, when we're talking about Lando's performances, we have to bring it down to the race start because that's where he's fucking up, right? But my point one point I'd make on that is the reason that looks so bad is because he's brilliant everywhere else. Like, he's been really, really good everywhere else. So his race starts are really poor. And if he fixes that, he's almost perfect in a race, right? McLaren have got a great car their team orders and strategy's bad. They're pulling a Ferrari there. They need to fix that. But the car is great. And then if we go to Oscar has everything going for his race starts are brilliant. His tire management is his problem. Like his pace and race starts are fantastic. His wheel to wheel is
way,
fantastic.
Oscar had a better pit stop, the final one where he almost killed
He
the guy.
likely could have won as well, yeah. So
he likely could have killed someone as well.
yeah. yeah.
That was crazy.
So
I mean,
like if you give, like I know Norris has had enough seasons, but I just think there's a big difference between having a race-winning car and having a car that's kind of midfield all the time, that sometimes is a podium contender or is the occasional podium contender. Like, I think Norris just needs to adapt to this new situation. And I think Oscar is just, this is, 18 months in? Like, I mean, Formula One, look at how difficult it's been for most drivers to adapt to the tires in Formula One. So I think Oscar's trajectory is fantastic. Yeah. So I don't know. Like, I don't think now would be the right time to give up on Norris. And I think you'd be stupid to give up on Piastri because Piastri has so much potential.
Yeah.
Like, for all we know, in 2 years' time, we could be saying Piastri is a better driver than Verstappen. Like, things happen in Formula One. I get why you're shaking your head, but my point is how quickly things change in Formula One. Like, 3 races ago, you're saying Hamilton might be having a bad time here.
Look, honestly, for you to be a Max Verstappen, you have to start racing at 3 years old and have Jos Verstappen as a father, which are neither of them are good things, but that's what you need to actually be a Max Verstappen. So
yeah, but look, we always say and I always say Verstappen is kind of akin to Schumacher in my books in terms of how they race and that kind of thing. But like,
the mindset.
My point is, we could have someone come along. Like Piastri could end up in a couple of years' time beating Max over a season because of how he is mentally as well. Like Piastri doesn't get aggressive or annoyed. You know what I mean? So it could be under pressure. It turns out that Piastri is just the better option as long as the cars are similar. You know, like
honestly, I just want to see
who
how
knows
Kimi
though.
Antonelli fares. He's one driver that I'm very excited
in
about.
Spa. Oh my god, that move!
I'm telling you, that move was brilliant. You need to see his move in Hungary through the slow and twisty section because no one overtakes there, and he did that.
I think he's got the Mercedes seat now anyway, right? Because he can't go to Williams.
Should. If Toto has any... I mean, Toto is already being an idiot by not backing George, but he should have some sense to actually just promote
maybe
this
it's a good thing. If Kimi comes in and then it's kind of at least Russell is kind of the de facto team leader while Kimi kind of builds up.
Imagine if Kimi starts being competitive from the get-go. Oh boy. Wow.
2025 is going to be interesting. 2025 is going to be very interesting, isn't it?
Can't wait. 2025 might be the best season we'll have until 2030. I fear that.
It might be the best season. Yeah. It might be the final good season we have if these 2026 regs are anything to go by. But anyway, we'll see.
Yeah, they don't inspire too much confidence.
I was so optimistic day one, and my optimism has kind of gone like Sargent's career. You know,
you could have used Joe Guan. I mean, I don't know why Joe Guan
does not get the kind of shit.
It's funny, you know,
because he's fighting against one of the best drivers in Formula One, according to F1 Twitter.
There was one guy who claimed that if Valtteri Bottas goes to goes to Williams, he'll be roughly 0.15 seconds quicker than Alex at Williams.
What?
Yeah, exactly.
I have 2 simple questions. What is that person taking, and where can I buy some?
Yeah, and is it cheap? It must be.
Like Valtteri Bottas is now, I would imagine.
Oh god, that's actually bad.
Well, I would imagine he's a lot cheaper now than he was when he went to Sauber. But anyway,
possibly. I mean, that 3-year contract helped him a lot. Shifting gears. I think we didn't really talk about this thing. Again, I've heard a lot of this nonsense. Let's just get it out of the way. If I'm not a huge fan of this discussion, but let's do it. You're Max Verstappen right now. I'm asking this because a lot of pundits have actually mentioned it. If you're Max Verstappen right now, would you consider a move to Mercedes?
No, I still think it's too early
Wait,
to.
let me reframe it a bit in a slightly better manner. If you're Max Verstappen right now, what is you can say your plan for the next 2 to 3 years? Because that's how you'll be viewing things. How would you actually try to,
I've
assess?
said this. Well, I've said this for a while. Like, if you're Max Verstappen right now, you stay in Red Bull because you've got no better options at the minute, right? The thing is, any option that you're going to is a potentially better option. It's not a better option because, like, we're all talking about how amazing Mercedes is. But how many times over the last 3 years have we talked about how amazing Mercedes is? And look at this recovery. And, like, albeit this is a higher peak, I will give you that. But, like, how many times over the past 3 years have we been like, Mercedes are back. Look, their trajectory is brilliant. And then, oh, Mercedes are nowhere. They don't seem to know what's going on right now. And surely if you're Max, you've got to look at that and go, if I'm going to Mercedes, let me at least see how the whole season pans out before I even consider it. Like, let me see them up until, 2 races from the end. Like, let's get to Las Vegas and then I'll make my decision. Because, like, and to be honest, I'm sure he could do that, because if he said to Toto, look, I want to see how good your car is 2 races from the end, Toto can say, right, well, worst case, Kimi just jumps in the seat in January anyway, so it's not a huge deal. Like, Kimi's not going anywhere else, so let's just keep him there, So surely he's got to do that, because how would it look if he just decided over the summer break, yeah, fuck it, I'll go to Mercedes, and then Mercedes dropped again like they have for a couple of seasons.
Red Bull found the silver bullet.
Yes, and the thing is, at the moment, Mercedes, for example, brought a huge amount of upgrades to Spa. They put them on Friday, and then they took them off. Now, I will say, in fairness to Mercedes, the way they handled that was very logical. They figured that the upgrades probably weren't alone the problems, but let's take them off, remove a variable. We've already got the variable of bad weather, and let's kind of figure things out. And it paid off big time for them, right? Yeah. They figured out that they think it's just a mechanical setup, and when they put those upgrades on again, everything should be fine. But the point is, Mercedes had to take a load of upgrades off and weren't sure about it. Whereas Red Bull didn't take their upgrades off. They just have changeable upgrades, Ted Kravitz, you moron. So like,
that was fun.
Red Bull at the minute have a key issue, which is they came into the season, I think, not expecting the other teams to be so close so fast. And their mechanical setup stayed extremely stiff, and their aero setup is now basically at the maximum. And because the mechanical setup is so stiff, the aero setup is so high, they're kind of in this, like, issue phase where
what
McLaren has...
understand is what happened in Monaco, because even in Monaco last season, that pole position from Max, he rode the curbs like he rode anything, right?
Yeah, like, but
something has changed.
No, see, this is the thing though, like, basically they pushed that mechanical, from what I've heard, they've pushed the mechanical and the suspension base to the absolute limit, because they've piled on aero to push everything almost to the limit. So this year it's a lot stiffer than it was last year. So last year they had kind of more of a window to move things. Now they can move things, but all of a sudden if they move things, McLaren and Mercedes are right there. So I think the thing is, right, you've got to think to yourself, if you're Max Verstappen, right, Red Bull, out of everybody, apart from maybe McLaren right now, understand these regulations better than everywhere else, because, like, McLaren and Red Bull are fast at every track now. Mercedes and Ferrari depends on the track. Mercedes are getting more and more down the route of being better at every track, and let's see how that pans out. Ferrari are getting worse and worse at being better at every track. We know how that'll pan out, because Ferrari, like they are on track, will probably not be covered in this podcast much. They're non-existent in both reality and in this podcast. Anyway, long rant. The point is to say, if you're Max Verstappen, surely you have to think to yourself, if I go anywhere right now, I have less of a chance, or less of a known chance, of winning the 2025 championship. Like, if I want to win the 2025 championship, my best chance right now is to stay with Red Bull because they understand these regs. Yes, we made a mistake this year, but they can change the suspension over the winter on their new chassis and be right there with McLaren next year because they understand how the regs work. If I go to Mercedes, I'm gambling with 2025 because they could be terrible, all because potentially they could be the best in 2026. But what happens if you give up 2025 and then you go into 2026 and we get a situation where Aston and Honda play a blinder and get it right, or worse, Red Bull absolutely somehow throw it all together, and all of a sudden you're in the third fastest car and you've given up 2025 and now you've given up 2026. So, like, surely if you're Max Verstappen, you can just wait, because worst case, you win 25 and then you get 26, you lose 26, but at least you can see where the field is.
Yeah.
Like, he's not going to lose all of his credit over 2026 in one season,
I think Max to Mercedes never happens. I won't say never happens, but I think in the immediate future, it's not happening. The reason behind that is once Kimi Antonelli joins the team, there's a Russell Antonelli lineup, which is, at least Toto would want it to be a long-term lineup where slowly but steadily Antonelli grows and takes over from George. That's how he will view it. And if that is the case, there's no place for Max anyways. So that's why I don't think it's going to happen. And even from Max's perspective, I think you kind of nailed it. But I think at this point, Max has to also, I think we talked about it a bit last time as well, he has to honestly accept the reality of the situation. And he kind of did in Spa, where he wasn't too upset. He was pretty level.
Red Bull did have probably the fastest car at Spa, to be fair, so...
Yeah, no, in terms of not getting the result. He would have been on the team radio shouting like anything, but this time around, Max was calmer. GP was the one who was pushing it. Last 10 laps of your life, Max. He said that. Drive like a champion, something like this. He actually came on the radio. And you see these things from GP. I hope, ideally, if I'm in Max's position, first thing I have to do is accept the reality that, okay, races are going to be this. Now the mindset has to be of 2021, where you have to maximize every race. And if Max is maximizing every race, he's going to win the championship this season. Arguably,
he gained 2 points this weekend, didn't he?
2025. Huh?
He gained 2 points this weekend.
He still gained 2 points. Yeah, and which is actually funny. But again, the entire debate about Max moving to Mercedes, and I've seen legit people mention this thing because, again, you have to mention it. I don't think it's going to happen. Ideally, in the next 3 to 4 years, I don't see it happening. I'm going that far ahead. Claiming that.
The thing is, it's just the last thing I want to point out as well is, like, Max as well has been mostly supportive of the team too. Like, when Newey left, he was one of the most vocal people saying, yeah, but Vache and Balbo have been doing most of the work recently. Like, he was one of the vocal people about that. Yeah.
And I think so other than the experts on Twitter who actually claim that since Newey is gone, so the car is shit. And even Ralf Schumacher. I mean, Ralf Schumacher has become the Jack Villeneuve of the current age. Every time he speaks something, I know it's wrong. So stop taking him seriously anyways. And he's moving on from Red Bull and everything. You touched on Ferrari. I think that we'll not spend too much time on this. What the fuck were they doing when they removed Carlos Sainz from the path of Lewis Hamilton? What the hell was that? Do you remember which part am I talking about?
Ferrari being Ferrari, just as usual.
I mean, that's the sad bit, because ultimately that was what was my final reaction, that look, this team is self-cannibalistic. They've not changed anything. And right now, Lewis Hamilton is moving to Ferrari next season.
Who's replacing Cardile?
They've not. I mean, they'll announce this during the summer break.
Here's some simple questions, right? Because I had so much faith in the Fred Vasseur camp, right? And he was making all of the right moves and right things, right? And then all of a sudden,
Vibes. Honestly, they were vibes. I've come to
after
realize
Canada,
it's vibes.
basically, yeah, like it was like after Canada, and I think the race after that, then all of a sudden you started to hear the Ferrari top bosses doing their usual, oh, we're not sure about this anymore. And since then, I feel like everything has started to unravel. And I could genuinely see a situation where at the end of this season, Fred Vasseur just turns around and says, fuck you, I'm out of here. And like
Goes
this,
to Audi.
so like Newey has basically given up on Ferrari from everything I've heard. Like Ferrari's he's not deciding between, he's deciding between, I think, Williams, Aston Martin, and
McLaren.
I think that's it at the minute.
I heard McLaren.
McLaren, yeah.
He went to Woking as well. Yeah.
Yeah, so those three teams, he's basically given up on the Ferrari idea. Enrico Cardile has left for Aston Martin, right? So I know he was there for 2 decades. It was probably just time for him, but surely if he saw a situation where he thought they were going to be absolutely playing a blinder next year or 2026, surely he stays for 2 more years. So I imagine Cardile probably went, I've had enough, like this is going nowhere, I'm out of here. The strategy team... No, neither do I. The strategy team hasn't been changed much. It genuinely feels to me like Fred Vasseur was making the right moves, but as soon as something went wrong, Ferrari put their hand in the honey pot again, or the honey jar again, and said, I had enough. Maybe it was the Lewis Hamilton move that upset everything. I'm not sure, because I know that wasn't Fred Vasseur's decision. So...
I think for me the biggest red flag was John Elkann coming to Spa and Lewis Hamilton going to meet him. Both of them spending time pretty publicly. Mm-hmm. It kind of shows who brought Lewis to Ferrari, right? I mean, as you even mentioned it here.
Yeah.
And if John Elkann is meddling this much in affairs, it never bodes well. It never bodes well.
The thing, like, signing Hamilton is absolutely, like, it's a brilliant move by Ferrari. I think it reinvigorates the team if done right. But where I'm concerned about that is, if that was a situation where John Elkann went to Fred and Fred said, Fred, I think we can get Hamilton. What do you think? And Fred says, oh my God, yeah, let's fucking do it. Like, okay, who do we drop? Well, obviously Sainz. Right, fair enough. And they make that decision together. They go for it together. But the whole way that was announced just came off to me as Fred going, what happened here? And I think there's something to be said that from that moment, Fred was like, am I losing control here? Like, what's going on? Because we both know Fred wouldn't have.
The answer is
we both know from Fred at Renault that he wouldn't have been happy with that. Even and I've said this in the podcast in the past, it's not that Fred isn't delighted to have Hamilton. It's that Fred wouldn't have been happy for it not to be his decision. Because the reason he left Renault is because of that kind of bullshit.
Too much meddling.
Yeah.
A lot of nonsense. And again, he was the guy who brought in Nico Hülkenberg at Renault in 2017, and then he left. It's just, you look at this Ferrari, you look at the Ferrari that Mattia Binotto ran, it's the same. That strategy call where, I mean, again, the problem is we follow the races too closely that we end up identifying these glaring errors that maybe even the media does not. Because I heard a few reviews and I heard a few podcasts from the media publications. No one has actually identified something as glaring as this. And none of them identified the fact that Charles lost a podium in Hungary because they brought him in and ran the shortest stint on the hard tire. Yeah. And it's the same nonsense. Where's the improvement? That's my worry. How is this Ferrari different to the Ferrari that Mattia Binotto had? It's the same strategic nonsense.
And the thing is, like, for a while I was kind of hoping it was just another case of recency bias and it would just be 2 or 3 bad races, which happens when you're building up stuff. But now it's kind of getting to the point where it's continuing over a season, to the point where I'm starting to get concerned that perhaps Fred has kind of been pushed, not aside, but kind of to the point where Fred is now infighting.
He's sounding like Mattia Binotto right now, because he says that we were as quick as the leaders today. And which race were you watching?
Yeah, yeah.
How easily Lewis breezed past Leclerc and how Leclerc was falling back in the end. Look, Leclerc got a podium despite Ferrari, not because of Ferrari. That's the fact. If he had not nailed that qualifying where his teammate was almost a second down on him, he would not have been on the podium. Forget about it. He was not making his way through the field. And
No.
yeah, it's and Lewis is joining this team next season. Dude, if right now the Lewis Hamilton fans have pretty much raided Mercedes accounts, even when Mercedes is not making strategic errors, imagine when Ferrari is going to do it every weekend.
I mean, Lewis Hamilton won the race and they were annoyed about at the time Lewis Hamilton was second in the race. It was a Mercedes 1-2 and they were bashing Mercedes strategy. So good luck next year if that's how you felt about that. Because
do you think Lewis made a mistake?
No. Sorry, my brain went at Belgium. I went like, no, what are you talking? Going to Ferrari?
Yeah.
I'm in two minds about this because I think his future at Mercedes was kind of done anyway, if that makes sense. But
it's being played
at the
out
time.
too much.
At the time the decision was being made, that's how it felt a lot of the time. I don't know. Like I said earlier in the season, or I said a couple of weeks ago, I think, when I made a video about this, was if he's going to Ferrari to drive for Ferrari and maybe pick up a few wins with Ferrari and have that excitement, it's not a mistake. If he decided on a team, which is what I think he did, based on the idea of trying to get an 8th world title, then I think it was absolutely a mistake, because I just don't see at the moment, and I guess we couldn't say this at the start of the season, could we? But like at the moment, it looks like Mercedes has more of a chance of being up there in 26 than Ferrari does. But that said, if we go Monaco and before, I probably would have said Ferrari looks better for 2026. But something's happened.
For me, the worry is not how the cars look on track, because Ferrari is not too far behind. If
they can catch up there. It's the strategy, right?
That's my worry. And that basically shows that this is an area that is still being ignored at Ferrari. And that is what worries me a lot.
That's what concerns me. It's like no progress is being made.
Yeah.
And
how do I identify progress? For me, if in how many months has it been? It's 19, 20 months. That's how long Fred has been part of the team. And if he's still not able to fix something like this, which can be fixed on a different, it's a parallel thing, right? It has nothing to do with the car or the technical aspect. It is a parallel thing. And that has to be, we're 20 months into it. Why is it not changed?
Do you think maybe there's a problem, like an endemic problem at Ferrari, where because they don't make as many strategy blunders when the car is good, but like that's just because the car is good, if that makes sense. So it hides some strategy issues. So do you think maybe like the thing is, I feel like there's
you're saying
two
Italians
guys
are dumb. That's what you're saying, right?
This is the problem. I don't want to say that two YouTube podcasters are more intelligent than the Ferrari engineering team, but I'm kind of saying that I think two YouTube podcasters are more intelligent than the Ferrari strategy team, because something's not right here.
Yeah. I mean,
like Inter's in Canada or Hard's in Canada, like whatever it was. It's just, it's laughable. It's laughable.
Honestly, if Lewis Hamilton had this run of races where he was put on a hard tire on a wet track, on a wet tire on a dry track in the very next race, and then there was a race where nothing happened, and then he lost out on a podium because of strategy, then he got a podium despite the shitty strategy. I mean, you would have the cultists raiding Maranello right now. That's how the things would be. And oh god, only for that I want to see him at Ferrari, because I want them to feel the pain that us Sebastian Vettel fans felt.
Do you feel like
in 2018?
I feel like they've gone the inverse of Mercedes as well, though, because it's like since James Allison came back, the thing I've said about Mercedes repeatedly is I'm still not sure if they're back because we've seen this peak before. But with James Allison and what they're doing now, it does feel like they're on a more steady trajectory upwards. Whereas Ferrari still feel like that, they'll have some nice times and then chaos will happen. And right now we're in one of those chaos phases. So I think you put it perfectly. Unfortunately, it feels like nothing has changed. We get a period of, wow, Ferrari's doing brilliantly, followed by a period of, what the fuck's happening at Ferrari? So I have no doubt that we could have half a season in 2025 where we're like, Ferrari's achieving brilliantly, and then half a season of, what the fuck's happening at Ferrari? And that has happened every single season since, apart from 2023, not so much. They were kind of nowhere. They were kind of nowhere last year. 2022, half a season. 2021, they were on their recovery from 2020 and 2019. So it was decent for where it was. 2017, 2018, half a season. Ferrari's brilliant. Where the fuck is Ferrari? Every season I can think of before that, up until, So I think for Hamilton fans, it's going to be a bipolar season where I would not be surprised if he has half a season of, look how good they're doing, and then half a season of
if
what the
in
fuck
that half
happened.
season, I mean, just imagine if in that half season Leclerc is beating him. So it's
I feel sorry for Leclerc as well at the minute.
I mean, I'm bringing his name up. Coffee Head actually sounds petrified whenever he talks about Lewis at Ferrari, and I understand what he means by this, because it's, dude, honestly, Lewis made a mistake. That's what I'll end it, because I don't, and I also feel bad about Charles as well, because I don't see where he's going to go with it. That's where he is.
I think the problem with Leclerc is losing. The problem is the longer you stay at a team like that, and it was a concern I had for Norris, for example, was the longer you stay at a team like that, it doesn't matter how good you are as a driver, if you can't show it on track, your market value essentially starts to slip. And I think Leclerc is now in that stage where if Ferrari doesn't turn it around or he doesn't make the jump, then
he has to make the jump, honestly. If 26 is not good, I think I think 26 is going to see a lot of...
I don't think any big driver right now... I get why Lewis did, because he was on a 1+1, and I think Lewis and Mercedes
I don't think
clearly...
the reason why Lewis left is only one, because I think he did not think Mercedes can recover, and I don't blame him for this thought process, because
that was my point at the time. And the thing is, even now I'm questioning whether this is a false dawn, because sure, it's gone on for 5 races, but who knows? You know what I mean? After the summer break, it could be a situation where McLaren or Red Bull are absolutely destroying them. So I think he made... The thing is, I don't want to say he made a bad decision, because the alternative was staying at a kind of floundering Mercedes at the time. And hindsight is 2020. So like in 2026, if Mercedes are winning or fighting for the title and Ferrari's nowhere, then we're going to be like, oh, that was a stupid decision. But that's easy to say in hindsight.
Not that. My worry is that he's, first of all, he's going to a tougher teammate. Then he's going to a team where, okay, how much of a cultural fit do you think Lewis is at Ferrari?
I'm sorry. I couldn't keep it. Well, I think sometimes words are unnecessary, aren't they? I don't think there's any worse fit than Hamilton, if I'm honest, at Ferrari.
Oh God,
it's gonna be fucking terrible. The thing is, if he jumps in and they have a great car and he's winning every race, they'll patch over everything fine. But when there's problems, this weekend Hamilton was giving out about, right? So cultural, forget about, for just, we go through the list here, right? This weekend he was complaining about Mercedes, who put him on the perfect strategy, right? when he's on inters in dry weather, he's going to be fucking fuming, right? So like the level of what he expects after being at Mercedes is far different from what he's going to get at Ferrari, right? Then all of a sudden, like if we go into the cultural things, right? I'm sorry about this, but if he tries to bring in like some sort of diversity measures at Ferrari, which like is applaudable in the
Nothing
UK.
wrong. It's nothing
No,
wrong.
it's no, and it's great in the UK because you've got a very multicultural society in the UK, and everyone is kind of going, "This is a good idea. Let's move for it."
Yeah.
In Italy, you've got 2% diversity, and you've got a culture that is not very accepting of diversity in a fucking team that doesn't want to change. So, like, I just Ferrari cares about one thing. Yeah, Ferrari only cares about one thing, and that's Ferrari. And Hamilton, I don't know, like Schumacher only cared about Schumacher, but Schumacher's main focus was winning. Whereas Hamilton's main focus is winning, but he's also got like all these side projects. And I'm sorry, but I just don't see Ferrari giving a shit about those. Like, I'm sure Ferrari in the contract went, yeah, sure. Yeah, we'll do all those things. No problem at all. Yeah, cool. Yeah, you can have whatever you want. And then he comes in and goes, can we change this? No, this is Ferrari. And it's like, yeah, but you told me in the contract, okay, burn your contract. I don't care. You know, it's going to be just like, I don't give a shit. I just don't see it fitting at all. I'm sorry.
Oh, God. We are heading towards a disaster, right?
It could be brilliant. For Formula One's really unpredictable, but if I was betting money on it, I'd say it's probably not going to go great, if I'm honest.
Yeah. I feel what's in store for him. Imagine
it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun.
Yeah. Imagine if Lewis told off or said rude things about Ferrari in the media. Imagine the backlash he's going to face. Because he does it freely at Mercedes.
Yep.
I mean, he's shat on the team every opportunity he gets, and
imagine
him doing something like this at Ferrari.
Ferrari will drop him at the end of the season, even in contract, and fight the contract. Like Ferrari will have no bones about doing that. Mercedes would try and calm things down relations wise and so on. Like Ferrari don't do that. That's not the way things work at Ferrari.
That Toto has given Lewis. Forget about
look at how quickly it dropped off for Vettel. Look at how quickly, and Vettel said some bad things about Ferrari, and look at how much he was shoved aside.
I think it was more a case of they had to make Leclerc look good. In 2020, it was a case of they had to make Leclerc look good, and that played a role. But again, that's Ferrari. Enough with Ferrari, by the way. I mean,
we're running late.
One more thing.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. The breaking news, by the way, the Carlos Sainz to Williams official. What's your take on the whole thing? Okay. By the way, just to brief, I think you might be aware or you might not be, but just for the 1 or 2 people who are actually watching. Actually, now, by the way, now we have more 126 subscribers. So, cheers, guys! Awesome job. Please bring your friends and moms and
our views are crazy
everyone.
Compared to the subscribers as well, which is great.
Yeah, we'll get there.
Yeah,
Matt
we're coming for you. We're coming for you, T1, Matt and Tommy.
Yeah.
We'll have a podcast off at some point.
Yeah. Would be fun. Anyways, for Carlos, the contract it's a multi-year contract by name, to be honest, because he apparently has a clause if Red Bull or Mercedes come calling, he can easily move. So what's your take on the whole thing? How would you view it from Williams' aspect and from Carlos's aspect as well?
From Williams' aspect, it's huge. It's big boon for them because if you're talking about the available talent on the grid, they've just snatched the best driver who was available. At the moment, obviously, if Verstappen or someone lined up, sure, but he's not going to Williams, so it doesn't make any difference. But out of all the drivers they could have got, they got the best one. So I think that's great for Williams and probably shows where they are. I know part of it's the flexibility as well, but I feel like, for example, Alpine probably would have offered baguettes and flexibility. So I'm sure it's not just that.
And trackers and cars, apparently.
Yeah. They probably offered everything, but they probably offered him
by the way,
a chalet in France
it's
and
a
everything.
complete sidebar apparently, but Alpine apparently has trackers on its drivers' cars, and they track wherever they are going. So,
But see, the problem
that's
is
a shit team.
the
honestly.
problem is Alpine or Renault is like it's half owned by the French government. So they have to be like really careful about everything they do, especially because it's such a unionized country. And the only reason they've got away with so much things in the past is because essentially Flavio would just do whatever the fuck he wanted. So that was one reason. And the second reason is because half their base is in England, so their chassis base is in England, so they get around those. I can understand, like, his other options were Alpine, which is not an option. Because it's Alpine.
I think they failed to secure the Mercedes power unit. That's where
I still think maybe they'll get it, but I think Carlos probably saw through that trick. Like, I reckon Flavio said, "We'll get a Mercedes engine. Come on," and he probably went, "Yeah, but Williams has a Mercedes engine, and they're currently beating you most of the time. Like, you're catching up now, but yeah, you're basically." Yeah. Surely he looks at it and just gone, "This is a fucking mess." At least Williams is on a stable trajectory up, and they're offering.
What was the other option?
Audi.
But again, he didn't want to lose to Hülkenberg again, so that makes sense.
Yeah, that's true. I'm starting to get a little bit. I can't think of the word to say, but I'm starting to think some of the journalists and people saying that Audi are going to be absolutely shite should maybe... No, I think they should start maybe toning it down a bit. I'm not saying that Audi are going to be winning by any means in 2026. Let's if anyone tries to quote me that way, they can fuck off as well. But like my thinking is, I think they're going to be a more cohesive team in 26 than people are giving them credit for. Like, I would imagine they'll probably be kind of where Aston is now, but Aston will be further ahead at that stage.
They have really high expectations.
No, because Aston are doing fucking terrible right now. What I'm saying is right now.
P5.
Yeah.
P5. Aston is P5. If Audi is P5 in 2026, okay, we'll bet on
it. Ferrari will be P10 because they'll have gotten disqualified for putting something in their car after everything else falls apart.
I mean, the man that actually caused the whole mess is leading Audi right now. So
well, there you go. That's all they have to do. Yeah. So there you are. Yeah. So they'll win, and then we'll find out that they were connecting their car to electricity lines as they were driving around the track or something.
Yeah. The reason why I don't think Audi is actually, they're not in a good position is, well, if they were in a good position already with just 18 months left, they would not be firing Hoffman and Seidel. The problem that happened with Audi is...
But I think that's a good thing that they made that decision right now.
But
because I was expecting Audi to make that decision in 26.
They replaced the same structure with the same structure, but hired a worse person. That's what they've done. I won't say Binotto is better than Seidel. I'll literally put my neck on the line.
Binotto is better than Seidel.
No, he's not.
No, okay.
Yeah.
I think for right now, it's a good decision, right? And actually, you know what? We can answer some questions here as well, because we need to get to the question section, right? Coffeehead has asked 2 questions, which are perfect for this, okay? What's up with Binotto and Audi, which we're discussing, so we can talk about that. And then it says, will Red Bull try to get Andreas Seidel and start rebuilding for 2026? So the first part of that is, I think this was the right choice, because I think
Andreas Seidel, Red Bull
to Red Bull, yeah.
What will he do?
I think Andreas Seidel to Red Bull is a terrible idea, because there's like you said, there's no real.
He was
there's no place for
Audi. Yeah.
Because they've got their technical leaders, Pierre Vacher and Balbo, and Horner's the team principal and CEO. So no, I don't think Andreas.
Buddy,
also,
apparently we have a breaking news.
Mm-hmm. Ferrari have been disqualified from Formula 1.
No.
What is it? Can you talk, please? What is it?
Let me... Oh, no. The Checo remains a Red Bull isn't a policy.
we look forward to seeing him perform on circuits where he has well.
They're keeping Checo.
Oh fuck, he's staying. Checo is staying.
Well, Coffee, we'll get back to Binotto and Audi in a minute, but your question, what are the chances Red Bull can lose both its driver by the end of the season break? And then Rohit says, if Red Bull is planning to drop Perez, where will he end up in 2025?
All questions are gone in that case.
Are you
but
sure?
Ideally,
Is that a statement from Red Bull? Or is that
Horner.
like just...
Horner
That's
to
from
Telegraph.
Horner?
Yeah.
Are you sure it's
Horner to
accurate? Because the
Telegraph.
Telegraph have not been great.
No, it's Horner's official statement,
Okay.
and it came out an hour earlier. So yeah, it's official, I guess. And I think yeah.
Yeah, so
Ideally,
everyone's talking about it. So Checo is still a Red Bull racing driver despite all the speculation as of late. We look forward to seeing him perform on circuits where he's done well before.
Yeah, that's the one. I mean, he's talking about circuits he's performed well on. Which one is it after the summer break? We're waiting till Abu Dhabi. That's what he has to do. Anyways, I mean, he's...
Okay.
So, yeah. I mean, he's staying at Red Bull. Fuck him. I mean, they don't put the...
Well, the answer to that question then is Perez and Verstappen will be there after the summer break.
Does that mean Daniel will be removed for Lawson?
See, this is the thing. This is only for the rest of the season.
Yeah.
He said
Where does
literally he
Lawson go?
didn't. But Horner didn't say till the end of his contract. He said for the rest of the season.
Yeah, but still, I mean, he'll stay. They will assess him till the end of the
Well,
season.
Lawson,
but where will
Lawson's
Lawson go?
contract is stipulates on having a seat for 2025. So I think Checo gets the end of the season, and then Ricciardo goes for a full season in
And they
2025.
compare Ricciardo versus Tsunoda, and then take
And
the
Lawson,
call.
yeah.
It's sensible. I think it's sensible. They're losing the constructors championship. We all know that.
100%. Yeah.
This basically means that. And I hope Red Bull was more aggressive, but that's where they are, honestly. Anyways, let's run through.
What other-
We're done with the questions, right?
Well, what's up with Binotto and Audi? The question: will Red Bull try to get Andreas Seidel? No, there's just no fit there. Binotto and Audi, I know you don't think it was a good call. I think it was a good call, just for a simple reason. Binotto and Seidel and Hoffman seem to be very integrated in like Audi, and I think the Binotto.
Here's what happened actually. The whole. I think I'll just first brief it to you. What happened? Seidel was hired, and he was told that he would be the lead. He would be the one who would be handling everything. He was made the CEO. Then out of the blue, they hired Hoffman and put him above him. So Hoffman started calling the shots, and it became a struggle for power.
And
Now
then
what
they got
they've
rid of
done is
both of
they've
them.
removed Seidel, they've removed Hoffman, and Dollner, something the Audi CEO. He will also be the CEO here, and no, he'll be the head of group of whatever the fuck it is.
Head of the Sauber group, basically. Or
Yeah, head of the
whatever,
head of the Sauber group, and below him will be Binotto. So the structure remains the same. And
Binotto's not team principal though, right?
CEO, CTO, they are trying to get Mike Crack for the team.
So
principal.
I genuinely think that could be a good idea because I think Binotto.
When has Binotto shown great
Binotto was
managerial
very,
skills?
very good when it came to the rebuild after 2019 and leading up to 2022. So if you're talking about just rebuilding a team in terms of its build up into a new regulation set, maybe Binotto is the right guy. I mean, I think Seidel has proven there's kind of a limit to what he can achieve in Formula One, personally. You know?
I'd say a lot of McLaren's success is on Seidel.
Sure, but I think that
Basically
I
built
think,
the team.
but it was kind of on a holding pattern of where it was for a couple of years, and then
Don't you expect that? Don't we expect something similar with Aston as well? I mean,
Maybe,
I expect
maybe,
Aston to be good
yeah.
in 2026 because the kind of shit that they're throwing on the walls, it might stick after a while.
I
That's
think
what they are going with.
I think it's just as important to learn what doesn't work as what does work. So this is a good phase, yeah.
Precisely.
I don't know. I can see why Binotto, like Audi chose Binotto. I think in terms of where they are and what they need to do, he might be the right person to get that kind of culture in order.
If
the
you're
other thing
getting
is
rid of Seidel, I think Binotto is the best
the
choice.
other thing
in
is
Williams.
maybe like Binotto wasn't great at Ferrari, but I mean,
Who is
Fred
good at
should be
Ferrari?
fucking killing it right now, and look at what Ferrari's doing to him. So for all we know, Binotto is actually like a Horner level fucking CEO, but he was running
Come on,
Ferrari. No,
I mean,
I know. I'm just saying for all we
That's
know.
next level of hyperbole.
I'm just saying for all we know, Binotto is like top tier, and Ferrari is just shit. You know.
Yeah, possibly.
It's unlikely, but anyway.
Could be. By
Shall
the way, getting back
Sorry.
to just to end the whole thing, the Carlos Sainz and Williams thing. Why I slightly worry about this is Carlos is going to a team where Albon has established himself as the lead driver.
Mm-hmm.
If in the first 5 to 6 races, Albon ends up. By the way, who do you expect to have the upper hand?
Sainz.
Okay, so if there is a scenario, I mean, again, that was a redundant question. If there is a scenario where Albon ends up having the upper hand because he has the grip in the team, he knows how the car is, does that actually affect Sainz's stock?
Yes,
Overall.
100%. Yeah.
So in that a risk, shouldn't he rather have gone? But again, Alpine
just-
has Gasly. It's basically, out of these three drivers, who would have been the worst adversary? I mean, let's remove Hulkenberg, he was the best. But out of Perez and, out of Gasly and Albon, who would have been a worse teammate for Sainz?
Gasly. I think
Gasly.
like Albon is a reasonably good teammate, and it's just like I think Albon just
In
expects
terms of
if
who would
he's
beat him more often.
yeah. Well, who would beat Sainz more often?
Yeah.
Albon. I think Albon's a far better driver than Gasly, personally.
Yeah. And that's where I'm saying it's very risky from Carlos, unless even if he's looking at a long-term contract or everything. What I've seen is, but there seems to be an understanding. Driver perception matters a lot on who your teammate is.
Yeah.
When Ocon had Alonso as a teammate, he was rated very highly. When he has had Gasly as a teammate, his stock has fallen, even though he's been, both have been doing a pretty good job. Albon has beaten Logan Sargent, but right now everyone rates him very highly.
Yeah.
So that could, I mean, I don't know
Well, I
how
mean,
good Albon is, honestly.
Russell beat Latifi, and I mean, look,
But Russell also qualified P2 in a Williams. So
I know, yeah.
yeah, he also
Well,
beat Lewis in Mercedes.
Albon's been doing very well. I think this is a proper benchmark for Albon now, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
Like, I mean, the problem is Albon against Verstappen at Verstappen's team was never going to end well, and I think Albon, in fairness to Albon, I think Albon did a decent job. Like, if we look at what's happened to Perez since, like, it does put Albon's drive in a better light now that you've seen, like, so I think Albon should be, I think he should be a good fight for Sainz. I just expect Sainz to have the upper hand. I just
out
think
of 10
Sainz is a better
races,
driver.
what do you expect the balance to be?
I think Sainz will win all 10. No, I think it's going to be kind of 60-40 or 70-30 kind of,
something
I
like
don't
that.
think it's going to be a whitewash, but I also expect Sainz to be the winner most of the time.
And honestly,
Yeah.
I won't be surprised if Albon wins or beats
Yeah.
Sainz as well. So, 'cause
Yeah.
it's very close between all of these drivers. And I think that's where it slightly worries me. But do you think Carlos can make his way back to a top team?
I'm not sure because there's so much talent floating around at the minute. Like, like the thing is,
I feel the same, honestly.
with Piastri there, and if Kimi Antonelli comes in and delivers, you've then got kind of, you've got
Ollie
7 or
Behrman
8
as well.
top, and Behrman, yeah. So then you've got kind of 8 drivers to fill the 8 top seats.
Bortoletto,
Say.
Gabriel Bortoletto. Keep
yep.
an eye on him.
So like the problem with Sainz is, it's honestly as well, it's very rare that someone drops down the field and comes back. Like, it's very rare. So I don't see it. Unless like Red Bull change their mind on having a proper, like a number 2 that Verstappen gets on with, or that Verstappen doesn't like, or
Don't you think they'll try to poach someone like a...
yeah, I think
Oscar.
yeah, it's yeah. So Anyway, yeah, I think so. Let's end the podcast on a new segment, which we'll do after every race weekend. And we're going to call this blatantly biased tweeting or blatantly biased X post. But for the moment, fuck you,
X-post.
Elon Musk. Yeah, fuck you, Elon Musk. It's blatantly biased tweets. These are tweets from fan bases that are blatantly biased. And basically, I'll read them out and then we'll just have a laugh. That's it, really. There's no real...
At their expense. Just to
At
make
their
it clear.
expense, yeah. So we haven't decided, should we name and shame and put them on screen? You said not to read the name out, you think?
Don't read the name.
Okay,
it's not.
I'll
it's
put
not
the image on screen. Who cares? The first one is this was yesterday and it was posted while Hamilton was catching George. And at this point, they thought if George pit late or if George fell back, he could still end up on the podium. And it was simply, George Russell, please move aside. Nobody cares about your podium. Which is just like... and look how it turned out. Funny. Yeah, that was... This one, actually, I'm going to say the name because I don't give a shit what you think. This one's from FIA Girly we were all posting about. And over the weekend, I think Hamilton found out that this was seen as promoting as a news source. And there was some face he responded where he was like, what?
What?
Basically, someone asked Lewis Hamilton about a quote from FIA Girly in the paddock. I need to find out exactly what it is, but quoted it as if it was like a news source, and his face was hilarious. It's just like this look of kind of, can you repeat that? Yeah, I'm going to try and find the video, but anyway. This was basically after the race, which she said, reported as news, Lewis Hamilton told Oscar Piastri that his tyres were fine in all stints. He was told to box, which obviously we've already had a laugh about, but another...
Lewis told anyone who was willing to listen to him that...
Yeah. So maybe that shouldn't go in blatantly biased tweets because it is just actually something Hamilton said.
I mean, she also says a lot of nonsense, but...
Yeah. Here's one that was fucking brilliant. This is someone losing their mind at the end of the race with Hamilton. Ali, I'll name him, don't care, says, if you're a Hamilton fan, surely you must be fuming after that. My head is fucking hot. He destroyed Russell the whole weekend and it comes down to a shitty strategy. Literally ahead in every session, dunked 4/10 on him in qualifying and dominates the race. And I will point out that I replied to this person and said, how was that a shitty strategy? To which that person then replied to me and said, where did I say it was a shitty strategy? I quoted their tweet and he said, where did I say it? Once again. And my final response was simply, if you can't read your own tweets, I can't help you here. But
it's
yeah,
not a fucking handwriting.
I know, like it's in text. But like, yeah, just comes down to shitty strategy. Like he destroyed Russell all weekend. Oh, brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Amar says, I'm reading the names. I don't care what you think. Come on, 15 plus laps, newer tyres and couldn't pass Russell. They probably turned down Hamilton's engine.
What?
Yeah. So the sabotage is back. They're turning the engine down now. Apparently, that's how they.
Was it Mercedes or was FIA involved as well?
No. They're saying that Mercedes basically turned down Hamilton's engine because it was 15 plus lap newer tires and he couldn't pass Russell. So therefore, it's obviously nothing to do with the track or the dirty air or Russell defending well. It's obviously Hamilton's engine has been turned down, which, by the way, cannot be done in race now because they've banned that over the course of a weekend. So well done there, Omar.
Wait. It cannot be done remotely.
Oh, yes. Yeah. So what you're saying is when he came
have
into
to
pit,
specify that.
So when he came into
no
pit,
kill
someone
switch
reached
somewhere
in.
where Toto is using his phone to control this thing.
Yeah.
Come on, sakes.
And then there's a wonderful Team LH fan. By the way, if anyone's wondering why these are all Hamilton ones, mostly all Hamilton ones, I think this is blatantly biased tweets.
Had a meltdown.
That's the whole point. So the point is, after every race weekend, some fan base will have an absolute meltdown over something. Or there'll be multiple things and we'll share them. But the only one from this weekend was just this meltdown. One person who particularly had an absolute meltdown is a famous person who says lots of stuff. Yes, LH44 Joseph on Twitter. I don't know which order these are in. I just copy and pasted a few, so whatever. But I'll just read them out, and these are in no particular order. Russell is about to steal a Hamilton win, I swear. If Russell steals this, I will riot to the heavens. I'm worried about Piastri now, for fuck's sake. Come on, Hamilton. Then come on, Hamilton. Followed by, that is robbery at its finest. Fuck off, Russell. And the last one that I have is, Russell, you will never be anywhere near Hamilton, you cheating, horrible bastard. The anger. Like, how can you watch F1 this angry? Like, how can you be so angry watching F1? It's amazing. Like, there is nothing in my life that I am this angry about, you know?
Like, I am about a few things, but not.
Well, yeah, you live in India and you've got Modi as a prime minister. I get it, you know. But
oh God. Yeah, we get.
No comment. Yeah.
No comment.
Let's move on. I am Himanshi. It's a strange name. Anyway, maybe it's an actual name and I've pronounced it wrong. Either strategy,
it's
George
an
was
Indian name.
Maybe
if
actually.
It's I am Himanshi, then it's Himanshi is an Indian name.
This one wasn't actually. This was relatively reasonable.
You don't have to sugarcoat it. If it's shite, let's call it out because she's Indian.
No. This was actually just this was a reasonable tweet. I don't know why it's here. Either strategy, George was going to finish around P5. Piastri had a one slower lap, which is very crucial. Lewis was theoretically race winner. Merck gambled and GR was lucky. Doesn't make Lewis effort, nothing. I'm still trying to figure out why I've got this here, because this is just reasonable so far. He did everything. Yeah. He did everything a race leader should do. GR has always been about himself. I think that was the part that I got annoyed about. I was like, all F1 drivers should be about themselves. That's anyway, yeah. So 8-time world champion versus 0, someone put. Because basically this was in response to me saying, I think I posted, why would Mercedes had a 1-2 either way, so why would they call team orders? Piastri wasn't close enough and they knew the data. And the response was 8-time world champion versus 0. And I'm pretty sure that account was being serious. I haven't copied the name in, but I'm pretty sure it was being serious. Let's see. GR was lucky. Fair enough. On the team radio, Lewis was being instructed to pit and was asked how the tyres felt and if he wanted to go along. Difference here is that one driver was given options and another wasn't.
This nonsense I couldn't really understand.
Yeah, I just replied to that was like, oh, is Hamilton not allowed to use the radio unless spoken to then? Or what's the deal here? Like this is one thing. These constantly come up, right? And then Hamilton complains after the race. But like Hamilton's been in Formula One for nearly 20 years now. Like surely you're not saying that Hamilton hasn't got the self-confidence to press the radio button and go, guys, what are you doing?
Look, the point is, if Hamilton had... Look, common wisdom says you pit as soon as Charles Leclerc pits. Mm-hmm. That's common wisdom. And Lewis knows that. He's just throwing a hissy fit because he's Lewis.
Yeah.
Anyways.
F1 Jordan. Oh. You know this will be good.
Yeah.
So not only did Russell need preferential strategy to beat Lewis, he also needed an illegal car.
Oh God.
It's just...
Yeah, why don't we have more of this? This is Rob Meyer, right? As well, another
Rob
moron.
Myers, yeah. Another one from LH44, Joseph. I hate George Russell. Reformed Mera, or Mera44QI is the handle, right?
Jesus fucking Christ.
And this was... Quote from George Russell, I take pride in crossing the line first because George Russell said that, right? Which is fair enough, right? Her response to that was, he is genuinely the most shameless driver to ever lived. I am embarrassed for him. I'm assuming from the profile picture this is a girl, clearly was not around during the Schumacher era because that is a relatively calm thing to say. What did Bradley Philpott say?
Fair play for driving that strategy decision, Russell. Annoying but impressive. Fucking hell! It's a shit word when Bradley Philpott is being reasonable.
Yeah.
Fucking asshole. Oh wait. I mean the morons, by the way, the quick stop podcast, the ones that you pointed out, where Denny said that Max will be reaping the benefits of.
The problem is I have to have other people share the like certain accounts with me because F1 Jordan, for example, has me blocked, so I can't.
Same here. Same here.
Yeah.
Oh god.
Well, I'll cut that down. But let's end it there.
Karma. They named it Karma. They've apparently put the video called Karma. For those who still don't get the outrage, I'd just add that it's understandable Merck wanted to place higher, but GR should have been told to swap with Lewis considering. Oh, by the way, apparently Bradley Philpott went to quick stop F1. Oh, yeah. I'll say this. If you look at the last 2 years, there are many instances where 63 had decided to go for glory, this. But when you have this, fuck it, man. She's written an essay. Who gives a fuck? I'm done.
Well, that's enough for blatantly biased tweets. This was a 2 hour and 45 minute or something podcast, so let's...
we were supposed to do it for 90 minutes.
An hour and a half. Yeah.
And I recorded for 10 hours. I mean, I should be awarded or something.
Right. Well, we'll see you. We'll see you all next week. Anyway, don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a comment, and if you find any blatantly biased tweets over the next couple of weeks, send them to us. We'd like to read them. Yeah. Cool. Okay. Right. Cool. Let's leave it there. Thanks, everyone. Take it easy. Bye.